Good afternoon, everyone. 7 minutes past the hour of 3 o'clock. Welcome to hour number one of The Drive on this third day of January 2024. Yes, I remember it's a new year. Don't write the old year down on your checks. Like you've written a check in a while. I don't know. Maybe there are some people out there still writing checks. We've got a lot going on today. Let me just run through a few of the things that we're going to be talking about here today. Number one is the 2024 election results and the way things are shaping up as we head to Iowa, which is only 12 days away. And I can announce here today now for the very first time that we will be in Iowa on this program live on caucus day, which is, as I said, 12 days from now, the 15th of January. There's a lot going on. You have to start thinking about what the Israeli war against Hamas is very much widened. There is a lot of violence across the whole Mideast region, in Iran and elsewhere. And so we're going to be taking a larger look at that because this looks like it's a hot spot that could really blow up on us. We'll be joined by Representative Mark Green from the border, and he just gave a press conference with the Speaker of the House. What have they seen down there on the border? We'll talk to them in the 4 o'clock hour. And, of course, we'll be joined by Pete Hegseth because it's Wednesday, and we always enjoy having him on. And one other story. There is the potential, it seems for me, there be a huge sex scandal brewing in Washington. In the 5 o'clock hour, I'll get into why I feel that way. It's a story not many people are talking about right now, but potentially could have big ramifications. I should also mention that the Epstein names are supposed to be dropping today. We'll be on the lookout for anything on that. So a very busy day. Let's start off with our campaign update, if we could, because, we're getting right into the thick of things right now. So let's take a look at that. 12 days to Iowa, and things are getting a bit more interesting. According to thehill.com, GOP presidential candidate Nikki Haley is now surpassing Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in national polling for the first time in the 2024 campaign. Now, of course, that has a caveat to it, and that is that she's in second place, and Trump is like 30, 40 points ahead of her. But nonetheless, she's moved into a solid second place. And there's some interesting things that could happen in New Hampshire in the days ahead. I mean, let's assume for the moment that Trump wins the Iowa caucuses. That seems quite likely. She's put a lot of her eggs in the New Hampshire basket, which is just a few days later. She's now about 20 points behind Trump in New Hampshire. But if you leave Iowa, and let's say people like maybe Chris Christie and Ramaswamy were to say, okay, well, it's obviously not going to happen for us, let's go ahead and bow out, then there would be about 16 points between the two of them that could go somewhere. And if they landed in Nikki Haley's basket, then she would be very close to Trump in New Hampshire. I still think Trump probably squeaks it out of New Hampshire the way it looks, but understand, Haley is on the surge, especially in New Hampshire, where she's spending a boatload of money, and that will be interesting to watch in the days ahead. There are calls for Chris Christie to get out of the race. From USA Today, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie has for months framed his 2024 presidential bid as a fight to take down Donald Trump. Now, amid growing calls that his campaign could inadvertently help the former president, Christie is doubling down on that message, showing no signs of dropping out anytime soon. In fact, I have a little soundbite from Christie where he's actually now doing a lot of attacking of both Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis.
So, look, she's pandering. And
do you think she's running to be vice president?
I think she'd be more than happy to take it. And my evidence for that, Anderson, is that she won't say she wouldn't. Now, I mean, Ron DeSantis has said under no circumstances would he take it. I've said under no circumstances would I take it. Why won't she say it? I mean, I think that the only reason, you've watched politics long enough to know, when one of us doesn't rule something out, they're ruling it in. And this is the problem with her now, is that she wants to be everything to everybody. If you want to beat Donald Trump, you have to take him on. When's that coming? You can't say you're going to pardon him, you can't refuse to deny you'd be his vice president.
They're running attack ads right now, but Haley and DeSantis against each other.
Right. And that's what I said on the debate stage in the fourth debate was like, these guys are pretending that the race is between them. I mean, what's this, the race for second place? What's going on between DeSantis and Haley right now is the race for 2028. That's what it is. They're both trying to position themselves best for 2028. And I think 4 more years of either Donald Trump or Joe Biden as president would be disastrous for this country, and we have to win now.
Well, there you go, Chris Christie making the case that both DeSantis and Nikki Haley are really running for the next election cycle. The former president, as I said, way in the lead. He's, depending on which polls you look at nationally, he's 40, 50 points ahead. And it seems very hard that for anybody to sort of overcome that kind of lead, the way things look at this hour, as they look at that today. But Trump is sort of looking forward to the election and not spending a great deal of time thinking about the primaries. Trump plans an aggressive expansion of the electoral map. Says he'll make a heavy play for states like, are you ready for this? New York, New Jersey, Virginia, New Mexico, Minnesota. This from Breitbart.com. Former President Donald Trump told Breitbart News exclusively that assuming he wins the GOP nomination for president again, he will work to expand the universe of battleground states and aggressively compete against whoever Democrats nominate in states like New York, New Jersey, Virginia, Minnesota, and New Mexico. Trump said he thinks he can compete in a number of states that Republicans have not won in many years in presidential elections. He says he plans to do so with rallies in those states and work to try to win them, but it may not be as hard as the traditional battleground states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia. Trump even threw out the possible idea of renting out the iconic Madison Square Garden to hold a rally in Manhattan in the center of New York City. Asked what he means by saying make a heavy play for states like New York, New Jersey, etc., Trump said he plans to do rallies and speeches in those states as he campaigns for the presidency in the general election. So there you have that. He's focused more on the election, it would seem, than the primary process, and understandably so when you're that far ahead. He is also appealing a decision to have him removed from the ballot in Maine. The Supreme Court would have the final say on this. Former President Donald Trump, according to Fox News on Tuesday, appealed the decision to remove him from Maine's Republican primary ballot for his role in the January 6, 2021 attack on Capitol Hill. Trump appealed Maine's decision, made by Democrat Shenna Bellows, who became the first Secretary of State in history to bar someone from running for the presidency under the rarely used Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, according to the Associated Press. Bellows made the ruling after some state residents, including a bipartisan group of former lawmakers, challenged Trump's position on the border. Now, look, a lot of states are going after this 14th Amendment argument that Trump should not be allowed to be on the ballot. I believe with every fiber of my being that the Supreme Court will do away with that. It will go to the Supreme Court. Colorado, it's stuck in Colorado with the Colorado Supreme Court. But, I mean, there are many, many flaws in the way that decision was come about. Seems to be more of a political decision than an actual reading of the law. And with a conservative 6-3 majority in the Supreme Court, it just feels like to me that they will take that up and they will dispatch that argument pretty quickly. And I don't think that Trump's going to have any problem being on the ballot. By the way, in Colorado, it really wouldn't make a difference anyway, because he was never going to win Colorado to begin with, right? We told you yesterday that, and again, there's more stories about this today, that the problem that Biden is facing on the Democrat side of the equation is a fraying coalition of black and Hispanic and young voters that have decided that they are not enamored with the current president of the United States. And with black voters, it seems Trump is not growing his number, but a lot of black voters are now saying they will not vote for Biden. They'll vote for a third-party option. And that's why Biden is losing the black voters who have traditionally been a very reliable voting base for the Democrats. Hispanics, well, Trump actually leads Biden with Hispanics and with young people as well. If you look at people who are 35 or younger, they are now leaning toward Trump more than they are to Biden by about 4 points. So the current president of the United States has got some real problems. From FoxNews.com, disastrous polls prove that Democrats need a backup plan for 2024. And they go on to talk about, well, with the polls showing Biden losing to former President Donald Trump in a general election matchup, Biden trails Trump by 6 points in some polls. This should unnerve Democrats, especially given that Biden led Trump by about 10 points in December of 2019. There are striking similarities between Biden and former President Jimmy Carter, the last Democrat president to lose re-election. For one, Biden's year-end approval ratings is almost identical to Carter's, as it was in December of 1979, the year he lost in a landslide, of course, to Ronald Reagan. Moreover, Biden's first term, much like Carter's, has been defined by economic pessimism, a migrant crisis, unrest overseas. There are a lot of parallels here. The withdrawal from Afghanistan, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and now the Israeli-Hamas war. To be sure, Biden trails badly on the major issues by 21 points on the economy, 23 points on border security, and 11 points on the Israeli-Hamas war, according to a recent poll by Marquette University. According to the latest AP poll, 50% of Americans, black Americans, approve of the president, and that's down from 86% in July of 2021. I mean, all of these things come together to make a pretty, I wouldn't call it completely rosy because there's so many things that could happen, unknowable things from where we are today. We can't know if Joe Biden will actually be the nominee. I mean, it's going to be pretty hard as we go forward to change it, but it's not impossible. And so that, I think that Biden will not be the nominee. You know who agrees with me on that? Donald Trump. He doesn't believe that Biden will be the nominee either. So, that could happen. A strong third-party candidate could arise. A lot of things that could change the numbers. But as it looks today, things look fairly warm for our former president and, pretty cold news for the current president of the United States. 20 minutes now past the hour. How are you faring in a rough and tumble market? Up and down, up and down. The experts at Beacon Capital Management understand it can be a little scary, but they have a plan to help you learn where you are and then give you guidance on a mid-course correction that may be needed. I mean, wouldn't it be great to have peace of mind that you're on the right path? A fresh set of eyes, not a bad idea. Beacon can provide you with that reassurance. It starts with a simple phone call to this number. I'm going to give it to you several times, so write it down. 615-488-9303. The experts at Beacon will get some information and come back to you. You have absolutely nothing to lose in all of this except for the worry. So get started today by calling 615-488-9303. At the end of the process, you'll be able to rest easy knowing you have a plan that meets all your retirement goals. Replace the worry with confidence that you're on the right path. Again, the number, 615-488-9303. The experts at Beacon stand ready to take your stress away, and you can learn more at askbeaconnow.com.
Homeland Security Chairman and Tennessee Representative Mark Green speaks at the border before he joins the show. Middle Tennessee nurse accused of a homicide, and a look at Republican presidential primary numbers. Those stories 30 minutes after the hour of 3 o'clock right here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It's 24 minutes now past the hour. There's Mac Maury back from a case of the creeping cruds yesterday. I don't know.
Yeah.
Creeping cruds?
Yes, they creeped up hard.
Well, anyway, glad to have you back. We'll have Mac Maury's Wide World of Sports at 5:20 today. We have much to catch up on.
Yes.
And Chris Webber is there in the control room pushing all of the blinky buttons. Somebody said that they saw Studio B, because I posted a picture of Studio B, my new music room, on social media.
Yeah.
And they said, man, you talk about blinky buttons. There's a lot of blinky buttons there.
That's true. There are, yeah.
And you got to know what the blinky buttons do. That's the whole goal.
You know the best way to find out?
What?
Just push them and see what happens.
See what happens. That's right.
That's how I've made my whole career. Just, what's this button do?
Yeah. Again, just wanted to reiterate the news that I gave a little earlier, and that is that we're going to take this show on the road for the Iowa caucuses. I'll be doing my show on caucus day from Iowa. Where it's very cold this time of year, as I recall.
I would imagine.
I had one trip to Iowa that I took. I was called in to replace somebody who got sick when I was working at Fox News. Wendell Goler came down with some kind of flu bug, and they said, can you pick up Wendell's itinerary? He was following around. At that time, there were 10 different candidates that were making their way around the state. And so I said, yeah, I can do that. And so I flew into Iowa and then made my way to where the team that was going to support, my camera crew and that kind of stuff, my producer. And then I got way out in the middle, way out in Cedar Rapids, and I got sick.
Uh-oh.
And I completely lost my voice. And I'll never forget how miserable and cold it was and how sick I was, running a fever. And so they said, well, you just need to come to Des Moines. So we're gonna hire a taxi cab to drive you from Cedar Rapids to Des Moines.
Okay.
And so I got in the back of this taxi cab and I just looked at the guy. I was so sick. I said, I'm not going to be much company. I'm not feeling very well. I'm just going to go to sleep here in the back seat. So wake me when we get to Des Moines. And about, halfway, it's quite a trip. And there's nothing remarkable about the trip. It's just flat land.
Yeah, it's about a 2-hour car ride.
Yeah, and so halfway through, the cab broke down.
Of course it did.
Of course it did. And so then they sent another cab out from Des Moines to come pick me up where I was broken down and then take me on into Des Moines. And I remember just going to the bar and getting 2 stiff drinks and going to my hotel room and slamming those and then going to sleep. And I sort of got my voice back and was able to sort of, rally the next day, which was caucus day. And that, but I'm telling you, it is so cold up there this time of year and flat. So
yeah, that's true.
Now, I come from flat country, but I've never seen flat country like there is in Iowa. It's pretty. It's very pretty in the summer, when the corn is up and all of the fields are green. But this time of year, it's just a cold place. But there's news going on there, and I want to go. And, this could well be my last campaign that I'll ever cover. So I really want to go and cover this campaign and sort of establish the flag. And what we want to try to make the point to people is that we take the political season at Super Talk 99.7 very seriously. And we want you to know that you can count on us for the very latest coverage and the very latest news as we work into what is going to be, I think, a remarkable election season. And nobody knows all the things that are going to happen. There are so many variables out there. I was talking about this yesterday. So many variables. You really don't know exactly how this thing is going to unfold. Because it could go a dozen different ways. The Supreme Court might weigh in one way. You've got the possibility that Joe Biden really is not the nominee. How's that going to work out? So many things. What about a third-party candidate that appeals to the middle? How does that rejuggle the numbers? So much here at stake. at a time when we need to know everything we can know about who's going to lead this country out of the mess we're in, and we're going to be into it deep here on this program and on Super Talk 99.7 as well. So live reports throughout caucus day on all of our shows, and then I'll do my show on caucus day from there, and then I'll head back.
Have you by chance checked the weather for
No.
Des Moines? I just looked it up. Des Moines, Iowa, on Monday the 15th. Supposed to be a high of 17 degrees, low of 7.
I know.
Is it too late to change your mind?
By the way, it's a 9-hour drive, and I have to drive it because I'm carrying up all the broadcast gear. Right. Yeah. So it's be hard to put that on a plane and what have you. And they wouldn't pay for a plane flight anyway. So, so I'm going to drive it up and drive it back 18 hours round trip.
Sounds like fun.
That's the level of commitment we have here on the drive to keep you informed. 3:30 now on Super Talk 99.7. Time for the news.
.30, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. 41 degrees right now. Forecast traffic report coming up in 5 minutes. A delegation of about 60 Republicans are at the southern border amid the illegal migrant crisis, and Tennessee Representative and Homeland Security Chairman Mark Green was among them, spoke to the media in Eagle Pass.
Secretary Mayorkas knows the policies. If the AG knows the policies are the cause, Secretary Mayorkas knows the policies are the cause, he's doubling down. He's doing this intentionally, despite the catastrophic harm to our country.
And Congressman Green will be live on the drive with Brian Wilson right here, Super Talk 99.7 WTM, in about 40 minutes or so, 4:05 today. And right now in Tennessee, Fox 17 says that a Middle Tennessee nurse, 44-year-old Takesha Tucker, has been accused of failing to properly use a lift while attempting to move a patient. The patient's fall resulted ultimately in death. Tucker was indicted by a Montgomery County grand jury on one count of criminally negligent homicide and one count of aggravated abuse of an elderly. Agents say she was arrested during a traffic stop in Kennesaw, Georgia. And with the Iowa caucus less than 2 weeks away, Republican presidential primary candidates are making their final pitches to voters. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said the stakes are high in this election. Here's Liz Landers with more.
At a meet and greet in Council Bluffs, Iowa on Wednesday, Governor Ron DeSantis told voters that the upcoming election signals a critical point for the GOP.
I think 2024 is a really make or break election. We can't run the same playbook we've been running as Republicans the last 3 or 4 election cycles where we've been losing. You got to run a playbook like was done here in Iowa with Governor Reynolds or like we did in Florida.
DeSantis is polling around 18% in the state, but former President Trump has 50% polling average there, according to 538.
And WTN's Brian Wilson will be broadcasting live from Iowa the day of the caucus. That is the latest news. Weather, traffic next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Let me tell you about King and Associates Insurance in Brentwood. Let me tell you why I think it's the place you ought to go for your insurance needs. They've been in the business over 25 years in Brentwood. They're an independent agency, and that really works to your advantage. Number one, you're going to get great customer service. You call the number 615-329-8121. You don't reach a call center. You don't get a recording saying, hey, stand by, your phone call is important to us. No, you've got a human being who will answer your call every single time, and they will put you in touch with someone who can answer your questions and get you started. And then the other thing is, an independent agency doesn't have to sell you just one product like those big internet insurance companies. I mean, they can shop around and find something that really fits your need. It helps you get more bang for your buck. And that's what you want with insurance, right? You're going to spend the money. You want to get the very best coverage that you can. So use the company I trust, King and Associates Insurance. Again, that number, 615-329-8121. They are the kings of multi-policy discounts, 20, 25, 30, 35%. Big savings to be had. So get your royal review with King and Associates Insurance. Log on to tkinginsurance.com. That's King Insurance and Associates. Royal treatment and great rates. .338 on Super Talk 99.7. Brian Wilson in the chair and on the air, bringing you news and information you can use so you know what's going on around the world, across the nation, up your street, and down your alley. I mean, we give it to you all. We take the news seriously here, but just so you know, we don't take ourselves very seriously at all. I mean, especially that Chris Webber. He doesn't take himself seriously at all.
I resemble that remark.
Yeah, you do resemble that remark. There is a lot going on in the Mideast. And we've been focused, but please, don't check out because you think it doesn't matter, because the stuff I'm about to share with you, it gives you a really good reason to watch this area closely, right? And it's not just that, that the Israelis and Hamas are in a war. That is ongoing. The Israelis, by the way, have pulled out a little bit out of Gaza. But they're not saying that the conflict is over by any means. I think they just want to now pull their people out from being in risky situations. They have, no doubt, degraded Hamas's capability inside Gaza. They may take some more limited movements, targeted attacks inside Gaza. But for now, it seems that they're pulling back to reassess where they are. But that's not all that's going on. I mean, the tension between Israel and Hamas has inflamed Hezbollah, and the Houthi rebels, and all of these folks basically do the dancing of Iran. And Iran is the big concern. And there are things happening. I mean, yesterday we told you about the story how a senior Hamas leader, Saleh al-Arori, was killed on Tuesday in Beirut in what Lebanese officials described as a quote-unquote suspected Israeli attack. I mean, this does have sort of the hallmarks of what the Israelis would do. The Israeli military, however, declined to say they were responsible for the attack in Beirut, but it sort of has the markings of something Mossad might carry out in advancement of their best interest, which is to degrade Hamas, take out their leadership, to cut the head off the snake, as you will. So not surprising that happened. Then there was another thing that happened inside Iran, and this one is really something. At least 103 people were killed by explosions in Iran near a public ceremony commemorating the death of a senior Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps officer killed by the Americans in a 2020 airstrike. The country's state media reported. Iran officials say the blasts were the work of terrorists. They didn't say who. They weren't pointing the finger, but they said it was a terrorist act. And this blast, of course, comes at a moment of heightened tensions across the Middle East, with the war raging between Israel and Hamas, an Islamist militant group that's moved closer to Iran in recent years. This, according to the Wall Street Journal. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, in a short statement, didn't assign blame for Wednesday's attack, saying the perpetrators and criminals who were involved in this terrorist crime will soon be identified and punished for their actions. Some Iranian officials broadly blamed the U.S. and Israel for the blast without offering specifics on how the two countries might have been involved. Let me just say, this particular attack does not have the hallmarks of an attack by the United States or by Israel. There were 103 people killed and about 211 people seriously injured. This attack, this explosion, had a lot of collateral damage. And that would not be the hallmark of a U.S. or an Israeli attack. They would do what they could to limit collateral damage. This is something else, but who knows what it is? We don't know who's responsible. And the fact of the matter is it further inflames, the region, because the Iranians are upset about it. And they are the people who are calling the shots with Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthi rebels, and a host of other people in the region that do not have the United States, do not have the Israelis' best interest at heart, of course. And it comes at a time when Iran has sent a ship into the Red Sea where we happen to have an aircraft carrier. We've been taking out little Houthi rebel boats and trying to degrade their capability with our military. The aircraft carrier we had, the other aircraft carrier we had in the region, the Gerald Ford, has been recalled and is coming back to the United States. The Dwight David Eisenhower remains in the region. And in the meantime, the Iranians are sending a warship into the Red Sea, not far from where our aircraft carrier and its battle group are operating. So when you look at all of this together, it shows you that the region is really inflamed, and you really can't predict what's going to happen. But let me just give you a little more information about this explosion today. Authorities say the twin bombings killed at least 103 people and wounded 211. The deadliest strike against Iran since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. The second explosion occurred about 20 minutes after the first, which is often a technique used by militants to harm both civilians and emergency responders after an initial attack. That's another reason why this doesn't sound like the United States or Israel being responsible. The attack came during commemorations for the 4th anniversary of the killing of General Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Revolutionary Guard's elite Quds force, in a U.S. drone strike in neighboring Iraq. The explosions occurred near his gravesite as long lines of people gathered for the event. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack. Iran has faced targeted killings and sabotage attacks suspected to have been carried out by Israel. But according to this story from the Associated Press, the assaults did not include mass casualty bombings like Wednesday's attack. Again, another reason why it doesn't sound like Israel and it doesn't sound like the United States has been involved. Sunni extremist groups, including the Islamic State group, have conducted large-scale attacks in the past that killed civilians in Shiite-majority Iran. So that might be a better place to look to find out who is responsible. But nonetheless, the attack is just another thing going on in the general Mideast area that has sort of got everybody on tenter hooks. And then there is this, ladies and gentlemen. Nicolas de Rivera, the French ambassador to the United Nations, recently told Iran International that he is extremely concerned about Iran's recent jump in uranium enrichment. His comments follow a joint statement by the United States, France, Germany, and the UK, slamming Iran for skyrocketing its enrichment of uranium up to 60% purity, which is near the level that is necessary to produce nuclear weapons. The condemnation was a response to an International Atomic Energy Agency report detailing their findings, which Iran dismissed as nothing new. The level of threat has increased a lot, so it's time for Iran to get back to compliance. And the IAEA reported that on December 26th again and documented the violation. So, of course, we're extremely concerned, Riviere told the outlet. The ambassador further urged the West to get things back on track after the collapse of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which collapsed after the U.S. pulled out during the Trump administration. Now dormant, the JCPOA once limited Iran's ability to enrich uranium in exchange for the easing of sanctions with varying success. Another report from the IAEA in late November found the total stockpile of enriched uranium in Iran now stands at 22 times the limit that was available when that agreement was in place. So things are, again, this according to Newsmax, by the way, the enrichment process, and they're moving inexorably closer to being able to produce a nuclear weapon, which the Israelis said they will never allow, which the United States has a very, very strong strategic interest in preventing, and our relations with Iran right now not the best, given that we have gone in support of Israel and have done everything we can to brush back Iran in the region without directly having a conflict with Iran. So, I mean, this whole situation, when you look at it, I want to raise the flare here that as we look at all of this stuff, it seems to me that that region is so rife with violence. There are so many things that are going on that could go south that I'm very concerned about our policy in that particular part of the world. And the one thing that I know is we have a president who really isn't up to making great decisions about this. And if you look at Joe Biden, it's been said in a joking way, but it's deadly correct and right on target that every instinct that Joe Biden has with regard to foreign relations and foreign affairs and foreign hotspots around the world in the past has been 180 degrees wrong. 180 degrees wrong. Afghanistan, perfect example. And boy, what did that set off? the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan encouraged Vladimir Putin to invade Ukraine. We wouldn't be having any of this problem, and Ukraine would not be decimated by the Russian military had it not been, for Putin being emboldened by the weak action that Biden took in Afghanistan. Our friends in China have noticed this as well, and they've increased their adventurism. And now we have another hotspot in the world to be very concerned about because we have a vested interest in making sure that things remain calm in the Mideast. So how's that Biden foreign policy working out for you, everyone, is the big question here. I would say it's not working out very well at all. So watch this area. Even though we're pulling out aircraft carriers, there are a lot of things that could happen in this particular region that could have a big impact on world peace as we know it. 50 minutes now past the hour. The folks at Eurofix have a very different business philosophy. They staff all their locations with more staff than the average auto repair shop. That's so they can be ready when your emergency pops out unexpectedly. Have you ever noticed how hard it can be to get a right now appointment for vehicle repair? Some dealers, it can be more than 2 weeks out just to get the appointment, but not at Eurofix. Eurofix has been offering quality repairs that beat the dealer without dealer pricing since 1999. Plus a 3-year nationwide warranty and the staff to fix your car now. So if you're tired of waiting forever to get your car into the shop, why don't you call Eurofix? Owner Aaron Stokes says we will never be too busy for our customers. We are here to take their pain away and do it now. Eurofix repairs all European cars, and Eurofix says yes to speedy repairs when others can't or won't. Family owned for 24 years. Call 844-EUROFIX or visit myEurofix.com. That's myEurofix.com.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. You often hear me talk about diversification in the investing process, but how do we diversify? Well, we look for things that move in dissimilar fashion historically. Some of those market areas might be really small companies or really large companies, or very growth-oriented companies or value-oriented companies. And one of the things that we find is that when we diversify between these various segments, we can reduce the volatility of the portfolio because they don't move in tandem with each other historically. Now we can do that in U.S. markets, we can do that in international markets, and in emerging markets. And when we can dampen that volatility, we can help get ourselves a little bit of a better outcome as far as knowing what we might likely have in the future or how we can take income from our investment portfolio. Now we also want to add fixed income or bonds to the mix as well. Now, if we know that we need to do this, what's the best way to do it? Well, one of the things that we often teach is this concept of market efficiency. This won the Nobel Prize in economics as well. And it's the idea that if I'm investing in, let's say, small value stocks, if we look at professional managers and their ability to say, hey, should I have this stock or that one, and picking companies or areas of the market, we find that they typically get lower returns than the market does on its own. They just add expense and they can add a lot of volatility. One of the things we want to avoid is anything that can hurt your returns and increase your risk in the investing process. To learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call or call 615-851-1950.
Tennessee Congressman Mark Green speaks at the border before joining the drive on WTN. A car rams into a Tennessee business, a bombing in Iran, and a dog found on the side of the road, but that dog was not alone. Those stories and more coming up at 4 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
All right, thank you, Mac Morey. We will be joined by Mark Green from the border at about a little after 4 o'clock. And then Pete Hegseth will join us in the next hour as well. A lot of stuff going on in this show, so stay with us, everyone. Looking at economic news, there's a story out that says the Fed Reserve officials in December concluded that interest rate cuts are likely in 2024, but they didn't give any information about when that might happen. This is according to minutes from that meeting that were released today. The Federal Open Market Committee agreed to hold its benchmark rate steady at 5.25 and 5.5%, and they expect a 0.75 percentage point cut by the end of 2024, which would be, through just before the elections. However, the meeting summary noted a high level of uncertainty over how all of that will happen. This according to CNBC. So everybody is looking at interest rates because it's thought interest rates will be the thing that will perhaps have the economy recover somewhat. Today, Dow Jones Industrials down 284 points, S&P down 38, NASDAQ down 173. All screens are red today. It is now 3:57 on Super Talk 99.7.
Four o'clock, I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. Right now, 40 degrees, cloudy on Music Row. Traffic, complete weather forecast coming up in about 5 minutes. A delegation of around 60 Republicans are at the southern border amid the illegal migrant crisis, and Tennessee Representative and Homeland Security Chairman Mark Green was among them, spoke to the media in Eagle Pass, Texas.
Tens of thousands of young people trafficked into sex slavery. Billions of dollars wasted. Expanded criminal networks now connected to the drug cartels in Mexico throughout our entire country. Director Wray admitted before our committee the other day, that with the border wide open and a war in Israel, Hamas can just walk right in. That's the director of the FBI. He fears for his own agents. It's clear this is intentional.
And the first hearing to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas is next Wednesday. Congressman Green will be live on the drive with Brian Wilson right here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN in about 5 minutes, 4:05 today. Right now in Tennessee, Channel 4 says that a woman drove through a business in Franklin County this morning, heavily damaging that building. No injuries were reported. No one was inside the store at the time of the crash, according to police. That woman was not arrested, but was dealt a misdemeanor for having an unregistered vehicle and insurance. Iran says twin bomb blasts killed more than 100 people today. No immediate claims of responsibility for the attack at an event marking the anniversary of the death of a top Iranian general killed in a U.S. airstrike in 2020. Karen Travers.
The White House says it has no indication at this time that Israel was involved in any way in the bomb attacks in Iran Wednesday that left nearly 100 dead. National Security spokesman John Kirby.
Our hearts go out to all the innocent victims and their family members who are obviously, their lives are going to be forever changed by this. But we don't have any more detail in terms of how it happened or who might be responsible for it.
Kirby said the U.S. had no indications there would be violence surrounding the anniversary of the death of a top Iranian general killed in a U.S. drone strike 4 years ago.
And back here in the States, in Tennessee, News 2 says that a man, James Allen, was driving in Dixon last night and found a dog in a cardboard box full of puppies on the side of the road. Those dogs are now with Proverbs 12:10 Animal Rescue. Allen said what made him stop was seeing a malnourished dog with their ribs exposed. That is the latest news. Traffic and weather are next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
It is 6 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock. We're into hour number 2 of the drive, and it's going to be a very busy hour. So buckle up, everybody. Stick with us. We're going to be getting real news and real information as it breaks in this particular hour. In a few minutes, I'd say about 4 minutes from now, we'll be joined by Representative Mark Green, who's on the border. Let me set the stage for what is going on right now in this battle over the border. Such an important time in this particular story. The Republicans in the House and Republicans in the Senate have all said to the President of the United States, you've got to fix this border situation, or there will be no more funding for Ukraine. There will be no more funding for Israel, and there will be no more funding on anything that you want until you do that. And against that backdrop, about 60 Republicans from the House took a trip down to the southern border, Eagle Pass, Texas, and did a look around. And I'm getting the sense that their resolve is very strong, that nothing is going to move through Congress until this issue is resolved. Earlier today, a press conference, here's the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and his take on what he saw on the border, what he thinks about that situation.
This administration should reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy, as was said. Rather than expanding parole authority to an unprecedented scale, the president should obviously end catch and release and stop the abuse of our parole and asylum systems. The president can and should act now. This doesn't require legislation. It requires leadership. And despite the White House's claim, he has all the authority he needs right now under existing federal law to stop this madness. But the message his policies have sent is the opposite of that. It's quite clear. Under President Biden, America has laid out a welcome mat to illegal immigrants, smugglers, and cartels. He is responsible for the grave threat to our national security and our nation's sovereignty that these policies have created. But instead of taking responsibility and providing leadership, this administration has done nothing but attack elected officials who are trying to fix this catastrophe. The people standing behind you have worked hard. We passed our legislation more than 7 months ago. You have red and blue states all across this country that are being forced to step up because the federal government has failed to do its job. Right here in Texas, Governor Abbott has heroically done more to enforce the law than the president has. And how has this administration responded? They have sued the state of Texas to stop their deterrence efforts. They have brought them to court to strike down their ability to put up buoys in the water and razor wire and the rest. It's absolute insanity. The House has done its job. As I mentioned, we delivered common sense legislation that will secure our border. But it's been sitting on Chuck Schumer's desk for 7 months. House Resolution 2 was our bill, and the time to act on it is yesterday. It certainly needs to happen. With each passing day, each record broken, this administration's dereliction of duty becomes more and more dangerous and more infuriating, and we are here to say that it must stop. What we saw today only made House Republicans more resolved to stand for sanity and the American people, and we will do it. If President Biden wants a supplemental spending bill focused on national security, it better begin by defending America's national security.
That was Speaker of the House Mike Johnson earlier today from the border near Eagle Pass, Texas. Now joining us on the Newsmaker Hotline, Congressman Mark Green, a representative from the 7th Congressional District of Tennessee, also the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee. Well, Mr. Chairman, quite a day down on the border. I understand that the Biden administration, if I got this right, they sort of cleaned up the place a little bit before you got there, right?
I'm not sure if it was the Biden administration or the drug cartels, because the flow just stopped. And so I got to think that the drug cartels had a little hand in this because they knew all the cameras would come when the speaker comes. So, we're talking 6,000 a day, and then boom, nothing. The only people that control the flow are the cartels.
Well, okay, so you had about 60 members of Congress down there. I explained 64. To the audience. Thank you. I explained to the audience the backdrop where we are on Capitol Hill, where Republicans seem to be standing pretty strong and saying nothing's going to move really until you do something about this border situation. You heard the speaker say there in his last little comment that he believes that Republican resolve is even stronger now, having made this trip. Is that your sense as well?
Yeah, I think from the folks that are down here, certainly everybody is resolute to put the foot down on spending until the border gets taken care of. You know, it's all about the package that gets negotiated, because we have to have some kind of security at the border. And we'll make a decision on, but everybody here is ready to secure the border.
All right. So the Speaker of the House, this, I guess, is his first foray down there, or maybe, his most recent at least. What was his thought? What were his thoughts about all this?
I think, Mike has been to the border before. This is his first trip as Speaker, and it was great to, as, the Chairman of Homeland Security, kind of say, hey, look, this is an issue, that's an issue. The most important thing for me to hear him say was that this was his number one priority. And that's above everything else. So I was really, really encouraged to hear that from him.
Well, okay, great. And again, we heard some of your comments down there. Listen, I want to get your reaction to a couple of things that the administration has said, okay? Because I'm going to play a couple of little short clips for you. First of all, I want you to disabuse people of this notion that is being laid out there time and time again by Karine Jean-Pierre.
Now we are having, we believe, a very productive conversation in Congress with senators on how do we move forward in a bipartisan agreement to deal with the border security. That is important. Now, what we hope is that when Congress gets back, we'll be able to act and get these things moving forward so we can deal with this issue. Congress needs to act. The president took this very seriously on day one.
Yeah, see, now she keeps saying it's not us. We did something on day one. Would you explain what it is that the Biden administration did on day one and why it was absolutely a non-starter on Capitol Hill?
Well, on day one, they came in and did away with all of the Trump-era policies that were working. They did away with Remain in Mexico. They did away with First Nation, PPP, all that stuff. They did away with it, and it's resulted in the crisis that we have. So they've done exactly the wrong thing. We've shown them that those policies that they have implemented, catch and release, have created an incentive and has caused the mass wave of people coming across. We've shown them that the drug cartels have used that in order to get fentanyl around, basically overwhelming the Border Patrol, causing Border Patrol to have to, leave the border wide open. Mayorkas has been made aware of it. It's very interesting. AG Garland actually admitted that was happening, and yet he's done nothing but double down on the same thing. And that's why this whole budget request from Joe Biden for money for the border is ridiculous, because all they want to do is process more people into the country. So, no, I'm not giving Joe Biden any money unless there's policy changes. There have to be policy changes. Are there needs for money? I mean, in H.R. 2, we put more money in there for overtime for Border Patrol, to plus up the Border Patrol, but that won't fix anything if they're just processing more people into the country.
Yeah. And that seems to be what they want to do. And by the way, here's the other little clip I wanted to play for you from Secretary Mayorkas, talking about, he was asked specifically about the 3 million people that are backlogged awaiting immigration processing and adjudication of their cases.
So that backlog is a powerful example of how broken our immigration system is and for how long it has been broken. Because that backlog existed when I was in the Department of Homeland Security in 2009. It preceded me then, and it precedes me now in my tenure as a Secretary of Homeland Security. That 3 million case backlog has been building for years and years and years. It got much, much worse when U.S. Citizenship and Immigration System Services, the agency within the Department of Homeland Security that administers our legal immigration system, was financially gutted during the prior administration.
Well, there he goes. He's trying to blame it on Republicans. And it is true that some of the people now coming across the border are getting slips of paper that suggest that their adjudication, their hearings on these matters, will not take place for like 7 or 8 years. So what is the truth about this?
Well, it's real simple, and Alejandro Mayorkas needs to get a thermofluid dynamics class or go talk to a plumber. If you put more water in the pipe on this end, you're going to get a backlog on the other if you don't increase the diameter of the pipe on the other. All he's got to do, if he wants to decrease the backlog, is stop letting people in, and it'll start going down. Instead, the number is skyrocketing because he's basically opened the border. The flow is pouring across the border, and this backlog is just skyrocketing. All he's got to do is close the border, and we'll get it taken care of. Now, I understand immigration's got to get fixed, but Republicans fell for that years ago before I got into the Congress, and we're not going to do that again. Not on my watch anyway. And so we will get border security before we do anything on immigration.
We spent in the last hour some time talking about the situation in the Mideast. And yet you have an open border situation where perhaps as many as 1.8, 2 million people have come across the border that have had no contact with law enforcement. You know, there are people in this world, like people in the Mideast, who don't have our best interest at stake, who may well have come across the border. I mean, I know you're very concerned about this particular problem.
Yeah, I mentioned it in my prepared comments for the press release. You know, Director Wray, when he was testifying in front of my committee, made it very clear in answer to questions that with an open border and a war in the Middle East, Hamas can just walk right in. They have intent, they have the capability now because of Mayorkas and his policy. So, and we know for a fact that 9 people were brought here by an ISIS terrorist. They released them, let them into the country. And the FBI is now actively searching for those people inside our country as we speak. There was Becky brought in by a known ISIS agent. So, and it was interesting, too, in that testimony, Brian, that the FBI director basically said he feared for his guys who had to go and do that job. I mean, that ought to wake us all up. Who knows who's here? And when the Border Patrol leaves the border to come in and process people, it's wide open. Yeah. I mean, it's wide open. Who knows who's here?
Yeah, we don't know, and yeah. that's the scary part. We actually don't know where they are. We don't know who they are. We don't know what they're up to. Yeah, it's scary. What about the negotiations? We hear that a lot of the negotiation is happening between the administration and the Senate. Give me your best information about where the negotiations now take place, because the Biden administration says that they're trying to work it out. You know, so what is the truth of that matter?
Well, I do know that the Biden administration is talking to the Senate, and I do know that Republicans in the Senate and Democrats in the Senate are talking, and the Republicans and a couple of Democrats have actually called me and said, "What will you accept?" And so all of this is going on. I haven't heard anything yet that makes me think they're going to actually effectuate policy that will work. So from my standpoint, we're still at the starting gate. Now, there could be some negotiation going on inside the Senate that I'm not aware of. Maybe the White House is okay with it. I don't know. I just know what, Kristen Sinema and, other senators who've called and talked to me have said, and I haven't heard anything that I could say yes to.
Well, that's a good question. What is it that you would accept?
I think for me, the most important, you would stop 70% of the flow if you just implement Remain in Mexico. If you simply implement Remain in Mexico and do detention by the law, the Immigration and Naturalization Act says exceptions to the policy are to be granted on a case-by-case basis. Everybody else gets detained. And if we detain people and fill up those ICE detention beds like they should be, then people will stop coming. Detention is deterrence. And that's why the law was written in a bipartisan fashion so many decades ago.
When are we going to get serious and go after the cartels as an enemy combatants? Because that's really what they are. They are doing everything they can to destroy the national security of this country, yet we don't seem to be willing to go after them the way that we have other enemies of our country.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I love the enemy combatant term a lot better than foreign terrorist organization, because foreign terrorist organization had some very specific stuff in it that when applied to the drug cartels doesn't fit on a legal basis. So I actually have been the one advocating for creating a new sort of classification that would allow the use of military force against them. That was supposed to be handled by there was a special committee formed on the cartels. I haven't been following that because I got my sights on Mayorkas. Hopefully they're getting some work done.
All right, so Mayorkas, he's going to be impeached, right?
I think so. I think we have a really good shot. You know, there were 8 Democrats that voted no on the privilege motion that was made by the other Green with an E, and so I went and talked to all 8 of those. There are 2 that are probably never going to be with us. If we get 5 of the others, and I think we can, because their big concern was due process, you know, and they didn't want to just willy-nilly an impeachment on the floor of the House without having due process. And I wasn't at the time done with my 5-phase investigation into Mayorkas. So they came to me, you're going to finish this. Yes, we're going to finish this. What are you going to do after? Well, we're going to take these articles up and vote on them and mark them up in committee and bring them to the floor. And so they're like, okay, that's what I want to hear. And so I think we get 5 of those, which is what we need, and we pass an impeachment on the floor of the House. But, you know, we'll see.
All right. Well, Congressman Mark Green, thank you so much for taking time to be with us from the border on a very busy news day. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Brian. Have a great day.
Same to you. It is 22 minutes now, past the hour of 4 o'clock on Super Talk. Let's talk about gold, which has been used as money for millennia. It's a tried and true store of value and is consistent across generations. Now, some have observed that generational wealth has 3 components: land, art, and precious metals. Land, well, who can afford it with interest rates right now? Art, you got to know something about art. But precious metals, I mean, that's something that's simple. That's tangible. You can hold it in your hand. You can feel it. You can touch it. And if you want more information about metals like gold, platinum, and silver, you should go where I would go, and that's Nashville's real money source, Nashville Gold and Coin. I mean, you know, it is true that your dollars are not going as far as they once did. Inflation is decreasing the value of your money. And if you have gold and silver, can be a safe haven during uncertain economic times. So you can learn all about the importance of owning precious metals by going to Nashville Gold and Coin. Maybe you have gold that was given to you and you're not sure what it's worth, or you're curious about learning more about precious metals and you need a place to give you the information. Nashville Gold and Coin, that's the place. Always available to discuss your options and educate you. So do what I did. Go to Nashville's real money source, Nashville Gold and Coin. Learn more and set up your one-on-one appointment at NashvilleGoldandCoin.com.
Tennessee Congressman Mark Green joins the drive and spoke on the surge at the southern border. A update on the Israel-Hamas war and Money News report. 4:30 Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It is 27 minutes now past the hour of 4 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. Brian Wilson in the chair. And our thanks to Mark Green, 7th Congressional Congressman here in Tennessee, for joining us on a busy news day down there on the border. It's big news what they're doing down there, and I really think that it's going to be interesting to see what happens when everybody gets back to Washington. Everybody sits down and find out, well, can we come to terms on doing something about the border, or are we in for all-out war? Remember, everything that happens in Washington right now, you have to look at through the lens of the coming election. Every single thing, we're in the stupid time right now, and everything that happens in Washington, you have to view through that lens, because each side trying to gain some sort of advantage over the other, and that can be a really difficult thing to watch. So I'm hoping that the Democrats get the idea that they're going to have to do something, or maybe they won't. But one way or the other, we're about to, if there is a recalcitrance on the part of the Democrats to do something, then I think I can say with pretty firm conviction that it will be absolute lockdown legislatively on Capitol Hill. Nothing is going to move, because this is the hill that I think Republicans are willing to die on. They want to stop this. It's gone on far too long. They should have been doing this before now, but one way or the other, it seems like their resolve has come, and Mayorkas is going to be impeached, it seems. Looking at other news from the swamp, a couple of 2 or 3 little things that I wanted to share with you. The Department of Justice is seeking to have Ray Epps go to jail for 6 months on a disorderly conduct charge. Federal prosecutors have asked a judge to send James Ray Epps Sr. to jail for 6 months when he appears for sentencing on January 9th. That's in 6 days, on one count of disorderly or disruptive conduct. This has been very interesting. Ray Epps was the guy seen trying to get people all ginned up to take some kind of action, and yet it seemed that the Department of Justice had no interest whatsoever in talking to Ray Epps, which made people speculate that maybe he was working for the Department of Justice. That now seems not to be the case. Although Epps engaged in felonious conduct during the riot on January 6th, his case includes a variety of distinctive and compelling mitigating factors, which led the government to exercise its prosecutorial discretion and offer Epps a pre-indictment misdemeanor plea resolution. So there you go. Defense attorney Edward Ungvagarski said that Epps should serve no jail time at all, arguing that he's been deterred enough by the serious fallout from January 6th that include the threats to his life and property. We'll see how it plays out. Biden renews keep going call on college debt handouts. He doubled down on it. The Supreme Court says you can't do it. He's already said that we've done it for 3.6 million people, and we're going to find other ways to do it, to circumvent around the Supreme Court. 30 minutes now, past the hour of 4 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7.
.30, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Currently 38 degrees. That temperature number dropping here in Nashville. Weather forecast, traffic report just ahead, 5 minutes. Around 60 Republicans in the House and Senate went to the southern border to be face-to-face with the crisis there. Tennessee Congressman Mark Green was among them, and he joined WTN's The Drive to speak on the surge and why it's happening as it relates to the Biden administration.
Well, on day one, they came in and did away with all of the Trump-era policies that were working. They did away with Remain in Mexico. They did away with First Nation, PPP, all that stuff. They did away with it, and it's resulted in the crisis that we have. So they've done exactly the wrong thing. We've shown them that those policies that they have implemented, catch and release, have created an incentive and has caused the mass wave of people coming across.
And there was a record 302,000 plus crossings in the month of December alone. Green says that he thinks they have a good shot to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas, with the first impeachment hearing set for next Wednesday. The second in command in Hamas's political wing is dead. Salah al-Arori was killed in a drone strike yesterday. It had all the hallmarks of an Israeli-targeted killing, but Jerusalem is staying mum. Now over to our Money News, Daria Albinger.
Stocks tumbled for a second straight day despite some encouraging news from the Fed. The Dow fell 285 points, the Nasdaq dropped 174, the S&P gave up 38. We're getting a look at the minutes from the Federal Reserve's last meeting of 2023. The Fed's Open Markets Committee agreed that inflationary pressures are easing and the job market is cooling off, so they left a key interest rate unchanged for the third time in a row. They also signaled that they could make up to 3 rate cuts this year, but they emphasized that inflation is still a ways from the 2% target rate, so they must proceed carefully. Employers posted 8.8 million job openings in November. That was down slightly from October and the fewest since March of 2021. But demand for workers is still strong by historical standards. The number of people who are quitting jobs, a sign of confidence in the labor market, hit a low that we haven't seen since early 2021.
And that's the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Man, I'm telling you, it's been getting cold. And if you've been waking up in your house and your house is cold because the heater system is on the blink, well, you need to call the people I would call the folks at Busy Bee, HVAC and Plumbing. They will come right over to your house and get you going in very, very short order. Now, you know, the way that you avoid having problems with your system is to do preventative maintenance. And that's what the Busy Bee Club is all about. Become a member of the Beehive Club for as little as $99. And what you'll get is 3 thorough maintenance services on your systems, one aimed at the beginning of heating and cooling season, one aimed at your plumbing, no overtime charges 24/7, and 10% off all repairs. That's right. Listen, I have had great experiences with Busy Bee. I mean, I told you the story the other day when my water heater went out, and I had people come into the house, and I needed hot water. I needed it quick. How they got me up and running in 6 hours flat. That's the kind of service you get from Busy Bee. Plumbing, heating, and cooling, your official Rude Pro partner. For satisfaction guaranteed, call Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling, 615-775-7833. Learn more at busybeehvac.com. It is 37 minutes now past the hour of 4 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. Time to say hello to Pete Hegseth, who is the host of Fox and Friends on the weekends on the Fox News Channel, but also a resident of Middle Tennessee when he's not doing that. Happy New Year to you, Pete. Did you have a good holiday?
Happy New Year, Brian. I did. Low key. Can't complain. How about you?
Well, that was a very low key. I tried to stay as low key as I could be. But I want you to take, it's the beginning of a new year. I want Pete Hegseth to look into his crystal ball and tell me, what you think are going to be the big stories, the big things to watch in 2024. Obviously, the election is one of them.
Oh, boy. Great question. I think you will see the White House go, as reports came out yesterday, full Hitler on Trump, meaning they're going to go with no policy record to go on. It's going to be like 2016 on steroids in their character, and 2020 of Trump. I think you're going to see, unfortunately, further escalation in the Middle East that could require action from this administration, which won't necessarily make it better or worse. I think you also see action, unfortunately, on Taiwan in light of the elections there. This feels like a moment where strong men or our enemies would want to move. All of the legal challenge, I think Epstein's list messes with some people and creates a lot of muck. We should have known it a long time ago. I think the legal challenges on Trump remain predictable but persistent. I think he's probably found guilty considering the forums and the juries and the judges and how baked in it is of something. So they'll try to call him a felon and change the election that way. All that said, I still think that Donald Trump is in the catbird seat to win again in 2024, but it's going to be like a washing machine trying to get there.
I think I agree with you on all of that. I want to just unpack some of that, though. The Middle East, and we saw, some kind of major explosion that killed 103 people inside Iran. The Israelis most likely took out a Hamas leader in Beirut, it appears.
Yep.
And we've got an Iranian warship moving into the Red Sea. It does, and Houthi rebels who are acting up all over the place. Seems like that whole thing is widening just a little bit. And you say, it is probably going to be a bigger story in the coming year. It seems. I don't see it becoming less of a story. It can only go one direction, it seems.
I think so. And this administration's also pulling the leash on Netanyahu's response because of so-called international condemnation, which is really just Muslim countries and their utilization of the UN and all the media to try to make Israel look bad, when the reason we keep having to fight wars over and over and over again is we stop trying to win them by actually bringing our enemies to complete and utter submission to the point where they're begging for the war to stop, instead of be drip, 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 and then wonder why some random Palestinian Authority group that's never had any authority isn't holding authority in Gaza, and we have to fight that war again. So Israel should do whatever it needs to do to safeguard its sovereignty, and we should do something similar to what happened to Qasem Soleimani. There's a reason they were having a 4-year anniversary of his death, is because it was such a stain on them that we took out their commander. But this administration won't do any of that. So by trying not to escalate, they create space for the enemy to escalate themselves. I mean, Iran's Navy is like my neighbor's pontoon boat. Like, it's not a thing, but it's meant to show a symbol that they're out there, the Houthis are out there, we can contest these otherwise international waters, and if we're not really doing anything, then they can, and then they feel even more emboldened, and then eventually you get something that can't be ignored. That's the problem.
And you mentioned about Taiwan, and I think you're right, a place to watch. But I think your larger point, and it's a really good one, is that the things that are on the horizon right now are things that can happen in the world where strong men around the world are willing to take on a weak administration and a very weak president.
Yeah. Why wouldn't now be the time? I mean, you've got an administration with a president who, is not mentally capable, with advisors and others around him who failed on any semblance of deterrence or successful execution. And then they run around the world with John Kerry yelling about climate change as if that's the biggest threat we face. If I'm an enemy of the United States, I make a move right now or very soon to try to reshuffle the deck. I mean, that's effectively what Putin did. And here he is going into 24 in a better position in Ukraine than anyone thought he would be a year ago. So this is a dangerous moment for the country. And, could something like that cut in one direction or not? I don't think any sort of kinetic action helps Biden because he looked strong, because he won't look strong. He'll respond weakly, haphazardly. He'll be the reason it was started in the first place. But forget about the politics. It's just a dangerous time, and we don't know where it could explode next.
So are you headed to Iowa?
I am headed to Iowa. I'll be there Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday of the caucuses.
Yeah. Well, and so will I. So maybe our paths will cross there. Yeah, I'll buy you a cup of coffee because you'll need it to stay warm. It's Iowa in the winter. Let's see.
The big downside, yes.
We just heard from Mark Green, who's down on the border with the Speaker of the House. It looks like the Republicans finally, I don't know why it took them so dang long, but they finally have found some resolve to stand up against the Biden administration and force them to do, as best they can, something about the border. Do you have hope that perhaps this will finally force the Biden administration to stem the flow?
Yeah, how many times have we said finally? I mean, it took a majority in the House, which took a couple of years. It took a speakers back and forth, which took way too long. It took Mike Johnson getting his sea legs. It took record numbers at the border. It took Texas trying to deem it illegal and do it itself and being challenged by the administration. It took the fake whipping but more recently, the DOJ saying they want to cut down the razor wire that Texas is putting up. It took 15 iterations of the administration showing they want the border open for Republicans to finally say, well, maybe we should stand up for the Constitution. Maybe shutting the border is worth shutting down the government. And it brings me back to that clip of Donald Trump. I think we talked about it once before in the Oval Office with Chuck Schumer, where he said, he looked Chuck in the eye and the cameras in, they said, Chuck, if you want me to take responsibility for shutting the government down over the border, I'll take it. Put it on me. And Chuck kind of grinned and giggled. And he goes, it's on me. I'll shut down government to secure the border. That kind of guts was something we used to have, and we've rekindled it a little bit on this issue, including the impeachment of Mayorkas. This is a policy. It's the right thing to do, and it's a political winner, and it's something Democrats can't change. And if they found their footing, it's about time they should lean into it all the way. Man,
I couldn't agree with you more on that. And Green said that he thinks that it's judgment that he has the votes for impeachment. And they're going to begin that, I guess, on January 10th, just a few days from now, about 7 days from now. I think it's going to be an eventful year. And I on the election front, it seems to me that there are still some things out there that make it difficult to predict exactly how this is going to go. I mean, if you go with conventional wisdom, today it's Trump versus Biden in a rematch. But I mean, you have the possibility of a strong, perhaps, or at least an interesting third-party candidacy that could come into the situation. You have the possibility that maybe Biden, it stumbles, makes a big goof, or comes to the conclusion that he can't win and does something at the convention to bow out, and then you have a whole different set of equations. I mean, and then all the court cases with Trump. It seems like there's so much unpredictability still coming in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, the courts are going to be busy, and the Supreme Court's going to be busy. And as a conservative or somebody who just loves the country and our institutions, I'm glad there are sane people at the Supreme Court, because they're going to have to put their big boy pants on this year and say, hey, we're going to have an election, and the people are going to get to vote for who they want to. The other thing interesting to note is RFK is getting on ballots, and he's at 20%, 25% in some
22, yeah, in some polls I've seen 22, right?
I mean, that is fascinating, and it certainly shows people don't want Biden or don't want either candidate. That could be a huge dynamic come down to the end.
And Biden's seeing a lot of his base, black, Hispanic votes, young people, seem to be eroding, according to the recent poll that was done by USA Today.
Correct. I mean, if he's losing young people and minorities, and all he has to do is lose 2, 3, or 4% in certain places, he's in big, big trouble.
Well, that's going to be really interesting to watch. So you think that the Supreme Court will dismiss and dispatch this whole 14th Amendment argument that is being made by the state of Colorado and the state of Maine and other places?
I think they will, because the alternative is constant uncertainty. I think 3 of the justices plus Roberts will make disgusting side displays of how much they don't like Trump and about the institution, but ultimately they'll want to settle it, because if every state's making a determination about who was more insurrection-y than everybody else, you just have a continuing mess. So I think they will. And I think it'll be a strong majority, higher than 6-3.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if it was unanimous, but you may be right.
Be.
Yeah, I mean, because everything I read about that whole situation seems to suggest that there just is no legitimacy to that argument, and that Colorado went way off the reservation in order to come up with the conclusion that they had.
Yeah, and then Maine did it unilaterally with an unelected Secretary of State who's not a lawyer, and no one ever voted for. So that can't hold.
All right. Well, Pete, listen, Happy New Year to you again. Thank you so much for being a good friend of this program. We always enjoy it when you have a few minutes to stop by.
You got it, Brian. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, maybe I'll see you in Iowa for that cup of coffee. All right.
Sounds good.
It is now 49 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. You often hear me talk about diversification in the investing process, but how do we diversify? Well, we look for things that move in dissimilar fashion historically. Some of those market areas might be really small companies or really large companies, or very growth-oriented companies or value-oriented companies. And one of the things that we find is that when we diversify between these various segments, we can reduce the volatility of the portfolio because they don't move in tandem with each other historically. Now, we can do that in U.S. markets, we can do that in international markets, and in emerging markets. And when we can dampen that volatility, we can help get ourselves a little bit of a better outcome as far as knowing what we might likely have in the future, or how we can take income from our investment portfolio. Now, we also want to add fixed income or bonds to the mix as well. Now, if we know that we need to do this, what's the best way to do it? Well, one of the things that we often teach is this concept of market efficiency. This won the Nobel Prize in economics as well. And it's the idea that if I'm investing in, let's say, small value stocks, if we look at professional managers and their ability to say, hey, should I have this stock or that one, and picking companies or areas of the market, we find that they typically get lower returns than the market does on its own. They just add expense, and they can add a lot of volatility. One of the things we want to avoid is anything that can hurt your returns and increase your risk in the investing process. To learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call, or call 615-851-1950.
Congressman Mark Green joins the drive on WTN to talk the border surge, a bombing in Iran, a Middle Tennessee nurse accused of homicide, and a shooting in New Jersey. We'll fill you in on all these stories. Top of the hour, 5 o'clock, Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It is 50, so let's call it 55 minutes now past the hour of 4 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7, Wednesday, January 3rd. Busy news day. Here on this program, we pride ourselves on I'm believing and investigating something that we think is very important because we believe the truth is out there. And in that regard, according to hotair.com and other news organizations, it now appears that key members of the House of Representatives are about to receive a classified UFO briefing. Now, this is pretty interesting. The House Oversight Committee, according to hotair.com, will receive a private classified hearing regarding precisely what the Pentagon and the intelligence agencies know about, quote, non-human intelligence, recovered craft, and biological evidence that is reportedly being kept from the eyes of government oversight and the public. The briefing was requested by a bipartisan group of House members that have been driving this topic on Capitol Hill. Now, there's really some interesting stuff to be learned here. Congressional interest in the issue has grown, and the members-only briefing will be held in the Office of House Security, according to the notice, and the briefing will be provided by the Office of Inspector General of the Intelligence Community. Now, why is that important? According to Hot Air again, it's worth noting that briefing will be provided by Thomas Monheim, the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community. It's significant because Monheim is the same Inspector General that received the complaint from UFO whistleblower David Grush last year and found that his allegations to be urgent and credible. So when Grush gave press interviews last year and during his public testimony before Congress under oath, he repeatedly answered many questions by saying he was unable to provide the answers in a public setting, but he would be able to do so in a secure classified environment. Monheim has seen the full list of allegations, and this briefing will be taking place in a classified setting, so members may well get some of the answers they've been seeking. However, if it remains classified, you and I will still be in the dark.
Oh.
I know.
Boo.
But you know what? I'm telling you something about Washington. If there's big stuff to come out of that briefing, if they come out and said, yes, we have bodies, we have recovered craft, we have this, we have that, and now we can finally tell you the whole story, and it's really incredibly sensational, we'll hear about it. Somebody will leak. It is 58 minutes now past the hour of 4 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7.
5 o'clock, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Currently 38 degrees, cloudy day in Nashville. Got the latest traffic report, a weather forecast on the way in 5 minutes. Around 60 Republicans in the House and Senate today went to the southern border to be face-to-face with the crisis. Tennessee Congressman Mark Green among them. He joined WTN's The Drive to speak on the surge and why it's happening as it relates to his colleague, Alejandro Mayorkas.
All he's got to do, if he wants to decrease the backlog, is stop letting people in, and it'll start going down. Instead, the number is skyrocketing because he's basically opened the border. The flow is pouring across the border, and this backlog is just skyrocketing. All he's got to do is close the border, and we'll get it taken care of. Now, I understand immigration's got to get fixed, but Republicans fell for that years ago before I got into the Congress, and we're not going to do that again. Not on my watch anyway. And so we will get border security before we do anything on immigration.
And there was a record 302,000 plus crossings in the month of December alone. Green says that he thinks they have a good shot to impeach Mayorkas, the first impeachment hearing set for next Wednesday. Israel-Hamas war. Israel will not say if it's behind the bombing that killed a top Hamas official in Lebanon, but U.S. officials are now weighing in. Andy Field with details from the nation's capital.
The U.S. saying it's still unclear who's responsible for killing the Hamas leader.
We have no indication at this time at all that Israel was involved in any way whatsoever.
White House National Security spokesman John Kirby, the State Department's Matthew Miller on Hamas's Salah al-Aruri.
Al-Aruri was a brutal terrorist who was centrally responsible for the attacks of October 7th.
Israel and other nations are prepared for a retaliation.
And right now in Tennessee, Fox 17 says the Middle Tennessee nurse, 44-year-old Takesha Tucker, has been accused of failing to properly use a lift while attempting to move a patient. And this ultimately resulted in the patient's death. Tucker was indicted by a Montgomery County grand jury on one count of criminally negligent homicide and one count of aggravated abuse of an elderly. Agents say that she was arrested during a traffic stop in Kennesaw, Georgia. And in New Jersey, a tragic shooting today. A local imam shot and killed outside of a mosque. Derek Dennis reports.
He's identified as Newark Imam Hassan Sharif, well known for his benevolence and community activism, gunned down in the parking lot of his mosque before morning prayers.
His loss will be felt by many in this city, across the state, and indeed across the country.
Attorney General Matthew Platkin at a news conference vowing,
"We are going to continue to work around the clock to identify and bring to justice anyone involved in the killing of Imam Sharif."
He says the preliminary investigation shows the shooting was not an act of bias, but instead senseless gun violence.
And some breaking news from Channel 4. Crews now responding to the scene of a gas leak. This is in Spring Hill. It happened after a crash just this afternoon. The area of Lexington Farms Drive and Dewey Drive are going to be impacted. The gas company has been notified, and they now are responding to the scene. No injuries reported there. That is the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Hello, everyone. It is 7 minutes now past the hour of 5 o'clock, hour number 3 of the drive on a very busy news day. We've had a lot of news. We made a little bit of news here today, having Mark Green coming to us from the border, where he held a big press conference with the Speaker of the House, and as he corrected me, not 60, but 64 members of Congress on what they call a congressional delegation trip, a CODEL, down to the border. Interestingly enough, it's so funny. It's been a constant stream of people in the last few days. I mean, record numbers of people coming across the border. And of course, the flow is controlled not by us, but by the cartels. And the cartels got wind that the Speaker of the House was coming down, and so they shut off the flow for one day so there would be nothing for the congressional delegation to see. So a little game was being played, there. But, I mean, really, honestly, the thing was, even if they didn't get to see the mass of humanity that comes across that border every day, members of Congress got a real firsthand look and conversations with key players down there about how unbelievably difficult the situation is. And we're in a situation now where it seems like Republicans are standing together arm in arm to force the Biden administration to try to do some of that. It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. The other thing that we've been waiting for here today, been watching closely, is there was reports that that the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients would be released. And at first it said they were going to do it. Then I saw a story said it wasn't going to happen today. Then I heard that no, that story was wrong, that it would happen today. So let's see what the Associated Press is now saying. Social media has been rife in recent weeks with posts speculating the judge is about to release a list of clients or co-conspirators of Jeffrey Epstein, the jet-setting financier who killed himself in 2019, while awaiting trial on a sex trafficking charge. There is no such list, and the truth is less scandalous. Previously sealed court documents related to Epstein will be released starting today, but the great majority of those whose names appear in the documents aren't accused of wrongdoing or have been previously mentioned in legal proceedings or news accounts. Still, the document release has fueled some reports, social media users claiming that the late-night host Jimmy Kimmel's name might appear in the documents, spurred by a crack New York Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers made on Tuesday. By the way, there's been a lawsuit filed over that. And other things as well. A millionaire, Jeffrey Epstein, known for associating with celebrities, politicians, billionaires, academic stars. Epstein was initially arrested in Palm Beach, Florida, after accused of paying a 14-year-old girl for sex. Dozens of other underage girls described similar sexual abuse. He pled guilty in 2008 to a charge involving a single victim, served 13 months in jail, work release program. Well, it's good to be him, right? But then, it went on. They did further investigations of going to jail, and then, depending on who you talk to, he either committed suicide or somebody killed him. This from the New York Post. Identities of over 170 Jeffrey Epstein associates, likely to include former President Bill Clinton and disgraced Prince Andrew, are slated to be published in court papers being released today. They have not been released as yet, as best as I can tell. The unsealing should begin today. Highly anticipated unveiling as part of a since-settled 2015 defamation case that accuser Virginia Giuffre, who was then known as Virginia Roberts, brought against Epstein's madam and convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell. Manhattan federal judge Loretta Preska in December said the names of roughly 177 people would be coming out in a case in the new year. Clinton is expected to come up over 50 times in court documents, though he is not accused of any wrongdoing. Two women mentioned who stand to be unmasked from the Epstein list have asked the judge to keep their identities anonymous, and I think that has been granted. One of them, who claims her safety will be at risk in the country she lives in if she is named, is making arguments before the court between now and January 22nd. And another woman, identified as Jane Doe, is currently being reviewed by the judge. And so we're waiting to see what those documents reveal. Not really a client list so much as it is a revealing of who the John Does and John and Jane Does are in this particular lawsuit that was filed, and if there are any allegations leveled against them. I think we know about Clinton, we know about Prince Andrew. Will there be other names is the question, and how high does it go? Because this guy was a hobnobber, is what he was. He would hobnob with the rich and the powerful. They were on his plane. They were at his island. They traveled with him extensively, and either on the Lolita Express or out there at Pedophile Island. So the question is, what are we going to learn today? Much anticipation, but I got to tell you, so far I've been watching, and Chris, I know you're watching as well. I haven't seen anything on it, so we'll watch to see what happens there. While we have a minute, I want to just visit some of the things that are going on with the 2024 campaign right now. And I didn't get a chance to get to this story earlier when we talked about it. And it's a pretty interesting story done by NBCnews.com on 5 things that could upend the Democrats' best laid plans for the 2024 election. And let me just run through them because I think some of them are interesting, and I have slightly different takes on some of this stuff. Number 1, they say, what if Biden drops out? There's no way the president would go home to Delaware and voluntarily give up an office he pined for his entire political career, would he? That's the conventional thinking in Washington. But what if Biden takes a hard look at his poll numbers and concludes he'd rather bail than risk losing to Trump or the GOP frontrunner, right? So if he's feeling every bit of his age, 81, no longer wants all the travel and stress that comes with the job, or if he decides the negative attention heaped on this one surviving son, Hunter, would subside if he just took himself off the ballot and retired from politics. None of this is expected, but it is not out of the realm of possibility, and I think they're right about that. And then there's some of the other questions that need to be asked here. About things that might go south for the Democrats. What if Biden stays in? Okay. Listen to this. An interesting analysis. July 26th may have been an uncomfortable day at Biden campaign headquarters. On that fateful afternoon, 81-year-old Mitch McConnell was holding a news conference when the Senate Republican leader abruptly went quiet, staring vacantly at the camera before he was led away from the rostrum there. What if a similar thing were to happen to Biden? A brain freeze of some kind, a bad fall on the steps of Air Force One, a speech that devolves into gibberish. Any fresh sign of frailty would reinforce Americans' impression that Biden is too old for the job. Biden's doctor proclaimed him fit for duty in February, but voters have their own ideas of how presidents should look, act, and sound, and Biden hasn't been measuring up on that score. They're doing everything they can to minimize the chances of a Biden stumble. He's taking the short stairs on Air Force One, but accidents can happen, as we saw on the stage. I think it was with the Air Force Academy when he did a face plant right there on the stage. David Axelrod has this correct. I won't say those words very often. He can cheat nature here, and it's really risky. He told the New York Times' Maureen Dowd last month. There could be other things that happen as well that could change it for the Democrats. I think the faceplant idea look, you look at him now, and if you look at Joe Biden now and just compare him to when he first took office, if you're, alert, cunning, and sly, and an astute observer, as I know many of you are, you have no doubt seen the degradation of his health condition right before your very eyes. I mean, the thing about things that happen incrementally is you may not notice it. Go back and look at some of the early video of Joe Biden after he took office. Now, he was frail then, but not as frail as he is now. Literally, I don't know that the man, could do a it'll be interesting to see, how he performs at the State of the Union which will be coming up before long. If he were to have a bad State of the Union address, let's say, where he just can't handle the strain, and he takes a could you imagine taking a bad step as you're walking up to deliver the speech, stumble down the aisle and in front of Congress and God and everybody, with all the cameras there and the entire world watching? There's so many things that could happen to this guy that could, bring Democrats to believe we've got to do something else. We can't do this. I think the brain freeze thing, I think it's entirely possible when you have a man who's 81 years old, has had 2 aneurysms, not seeming to be in the best of health, certainly showing every one of his 81 years of age. It's entirely possible that something could happen that would cause the Democrats to say, he's not our guy. But then the question would be, well, who would the guy be? Who would the person be? There are other things going on. World events could deteriorate. An attack against the homeland, I pray doesn't happen. I desperately pray it doesn't happen, but I don't have any confidence that it won't, given how lax our security has been on the border. If it continues to deteriorate and the polls continue to deteriorate for Biden as they are, then I keep coming back to the conclusion that Democrats will likely find another option. And how it's engineered and when it happens or what the future may bring, I don't know. I can't say. My crystal ball's not that clear. But I can tell you I feel like they are dangerously close to revealing to the world that our emperor has no clothes, that our emperor has no working, functioning brain, that our emperor is so frail at age 81 that he's really not up to the job of being president of the United States going forward. So I don't know. I keep looking at it and I keep thinking he's not going to be the guy. And I thought it's pretty interesting that Donald Trump feels the same way. Donald Trump is going forward thinking that Joe Biden may not be the guy he runs against. From the Daily Caller, CNN analyst says Dems have to hype up the fear because they know that voters vote with their pocketbook. CNN's Errol Lewis said Tuesday Democrats have to hype up fear amongst voters because they know they can't win on their economic messaging. The host noted that President Joe Biden has returned to the high-stakes message of his 2020 campaign and that Trump poses a threat to our democracy. It doesn't strike me as a rarity that candidates, particularly those running against incumbent, choose doom and gloom and everything is terrible, said the host. And then co-host asked whether the messaging is a consequence of negative partisanship working well among voters. Yeah, negative advertising works. It generally works. It's ugly, but it works. But wait till Trump starts doing his negative advertising. It would seem to me that the negative advertising one could put together against the current president of the United States is devastating. And it hasn't even started. I'm telling you, politics in this coming year are going to be very interesting. And again, reminder that today we're announcing that I will take this show on the road and I will be doing the show from Iowa, from warm and sunny Des Moines, Iowa, on the day of the caucus. So we're planting our flag that you can count on us for big political coverage here on Super Talk 99.7. 21 minutes now past the hour of 5 o'clock. Listen, there are just a couple of days left, I think, until we end hunting season. But it's not too late to buy a gun safe from the folks over at DT McCall. Gun safes are sales tax free. That's right, sales tax free. So when you're not in a tree stand, make sure you're keeping your gun safe with a gun safe from DT McCall's. You may not know it, but DT McCall's is the largest Liberty Safe dealer in all of Tennessee. And the reason is their policy on delivery and setup. Others charge $500 at least for delivery and setup of the big models, $300 for the smaller models. DT McCall & Sons delivers every safe free every time period, never a setup charge. And security is important these days. Gun safes are great for guns, but they can be used for other things as well. Valuables, cash, jewelry, important documents, wills, deeds, car titles, whatever you need to keep safe from theft or fire. So still time to save some big bucks on your gun safe when you shop at your local DT McCall's. Just go to dtmccalls.com for locations and information.
A delegation of some 60 Republicans at the southern border today. Crime in Tennessee and the Iowa caucus less than 2 weeks away. We start looking at some numbers there. 530 Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat.
That's right. It's time for Mac Morey's Wide, and Wild World of Sports, or something like that. And now here is the host of our program. You know him, you love him, you can't live without him. The one, the only, Mac Morey, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, Happy New Year.
Yeah, well, we were saying Happy New Year yesterday, but you weren't around. So
no, I was not here.
Yeah, you had a case, let's just for the record say, it was a case of the creeping crud.
The case of the creeping crud, that was for sure it. Yes, still
Okay.
slightly creeping, but less so that's good.
Well, less cruddy. Okay,
Yes,
well,
less
cruddy. All right, so a lot of things to catch up on. Where do you want to start?
Well, I figured we quickly just talk about the Titans' loss on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
They went to Houston, lost 26-3. Was not a good showing. The offensive line looked completely horrific. The defense was letting things go fly by them. It was just an all-around poor performance. And now the main headline to come from that loss is something that we've discussed here on this segment from time to time. And now we have a little bit more weight to this discussion as a report from Bleacher Report came out. And NFL insiders starting to wonder about Mike Vrabel's future as the Titans head coach. So obviously that's going to be, it's going to be a discussion, 5-18 now, the last 23 games of the Titans.
Wow.
5-18.
That's not good.
The next game, last game of the season this year will be against the Jacksonville Jaguars. If they were to win that game, that would be the first division win in that 23-game stretch in that 5-18. So winless in the division. They lost the last 7 games of last season, obviously 5-11 this year. So it's been a terrible, to put it even lightly, run for the Titans. And you look at some of their past coaches, Mike Mularkey was fired after going 20-21 in 3 seasons. Ken Wisnut before that was 3-20 in his short time. Mike Munchak was 22-26. But if you just take Mularkey and Munchak, and Jeff Fisher even, he was a little over 500, but they're, around 500. And where Vrabel may be 48-34, he's well over 500 in his few seasons here. Looking at these past 2 years, he's well below that. And so you got to think, okay, well, the standard really has been set to even higher than these past 2 years. Like if Mularkey, Munchak make these mistakes in 2 seasons, they would be gone. And I don't know if that's the same standard for Vrabel, but the conversation has to start rearing its ugly head.
Well, and there is some pretty high-level coaching talent said to be out there right now. I read that some of the NFL teams are now looking at Michigan coach John
Harbaugh. Yep.
John Harbaugh, I'm sorry.
Or no, Jim Harbaugh, excuse me. His brother's
right.
at the Baltimore. Yeah, John.
Right,
Yes,
okay.
Jim, yes.
So to have another Harbaugh in the NFL, that's somebody that would be a pretty high-profile
crazy,
coach.
yes.
Yeah, and then there's the question of Belichick and his situation with the Patriots, which is said not to be good.
No, definitely not. And I was just out here talking with someone over on one of our sister stations about this very topic, Brian, with Bill Belichick. And it's not just the openings. There's 7 or 8 alleged openings by the time this season ends for head coaching, just vacancies, and there could be more. But think about teams who won't have a vacancy who would fire their head coach to bring in Belichick, because there are plenty of franchises like that, too.
Interesting.
Who would say, you know what, we've enjoyed your time here. We're going to buy out the rest of your contract. Let's bring in 10-year champion Bill Belichick. And I don't know if the Titans fall amongst that list. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. And I know I've echoed opposite responses in this regard here, but I don't know. I'm just starting to think this is tough. And we're talking about a guy in Mike Vrabel who won Coach of the Year just 2 seasons ago. So it's hard to talk about it this way, but it's been rough. A lot is riding on this next year.
Well, all right, so let's talk a little bit about college football and some of the games that were recently played.
Man, what a Final Four. That was absolutely incredible. So
fantastic
two of the, 2 of the best games that we've had in a semifinal. Obviously, Michigan coming away with it. Nick Saban, some uncharacteristic late calls in the game, just not having that kind of clutch gene that we always just expect him to bring. And then Texas almost making a miraculous comeback down 14 late in the game. They couldn't quite get it. But Washington scapes out another. I think we're in for a fantastic championship, guys. Washington versus Michigan is going to be awesome.
Yeah, and then Harbaugh can pack his bags to come to Nashville.
maybe come over to Nashville and turn us around.
I think you're going to have to fight Chicago for Harbaugh. They want him to come back home.
Well, there's a lot of people out there. You say, as you point out, it's absolutely correct that there are a lot of folks out there looking for head coaches, are likely to be looking for head coaches, and it's going to be an open market. I don't know. Do you really think that they're going to cut him, or do they think they're going to give him another year?
I think it's one more year, but I think it's not even the full
Not
season.
even the full year. Yeah,
not even the
that's what I
full
was
season.
thinking.
I think they've got to really perform next year. Whether that's right or wrong, whether you agree or disagree, I think that's where Tennessee's at. I think they're going to keep him though this year.
Well, he's going to claim that he's been the victim of bad picks during the draft, and that it give me a chance to get my picks in and get my people in there and see what I can do. That's his argument right now, and it's not a bad argument.
It is, and it's not a bad argument, but that argument's going to run dry here real quick because he had his hand and his opinion heavily in this year's draft. And what was a big pick in this year's draft? That's quarterback Will Levis. And if Will Levis doesn't look good next year, then that's going to be on Mike Vrabel. Well, no, you were a part of that decision. You were in the room there. You know, so it's all going to, it's happening here quickly. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I think Levis is a quarterback for the future.
Me too.
And I think he's a great quarterback. I think he needs a little support on the O-line is what I think. But that's my vaunted
Maybe
sports
just a little.
knowledge.
Give him 1 second of protection, please.
Anything
way,
would be nice.
way over because it's a good conversation. Time now for the news with Mac Maury at 5:32.
"32 minutes after the hour of 5 o'clock, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. 37 degrees, cloudy in Music City. Full weather forecast. Latest traffic report on the way in 5 minutes. The House Speaker toured the U.S.-Mexico border at Eagle Pass, Texas today with more than 60 of his fellow Republicans. Stephen Portnoy.
America is at a breaking point.
Standing alongside dozens of his GOP colleagues, House Speaker Mike Johnson called the unprecedented levels of migration at the border heartbreaking and infuriating.
It is an unmitigated disaster, a catastrophe.
House Republicans say they'll hold a hearing next week to tee up the impeachment of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. The White House calls that a baseless stunt, saying if House Republicans were serious about controlling the border, they'd be at the table for the bipartisan talks continuing in the Senate.
Tennessee Congressman Mark Green joined the drive and said that he believes they have a good shot to impeach Mayorkas. Crime in Tennessee. A man was shot at a home in South Nashville early this morning. The shooting happened around 4:30 a.m. on Shasta Drive. One man was shot in the foot, will recover. Metro Police trying to get to the bottom of what happened as they have heard conflicting stories. And some GOP news with the Iowa caucus less than 2 weeks away. Republican presidential primary candidates are making their final pitches to voters. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said the stakes are high in this election. Liz Landers.
At a meet and greet in Council Bluffs, Iowa on Wednesday, Governor Ron DeSantis told voters that the upcoming election signals a critical point for the GOP.
I think 2024 is a really make or break election. We can't run the same playbook we've been running as Republicans the last 3 or 4 election cycles where we've been losing. You got to run a playbook like was done here in Iowa with Governor Reynolds or like we did in Florida.
DeSantis is polling around 18% in the state, but former President Trump has 50% polling average there, according to 538.
And WTN's Brian Wilson will be broadcasting live from Iowa the day of the caucus. That is the latest news, weather, traffic next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
You know, if you're in the market for a pole barn, the two brothers that run Stoltz Co. are the two guys that you need to talk to. Exceptional quality, craftsmanship, and fair prices. They can build your new pole barn to your specifications with your needs in mind. That is the Stoltz Co. difference. You can use pole barns for all kinds of things. It can function as a classic tool and work barn, a garage, or even a place to live. Flexibility is the key. They combine the classic post-frame barn look with the reliability of modern materials. and techniques to give you a finished barn that will stand the test of time. They don't scrimp on quality. They don't cut corners. They believe their customers deserve only the best. Now, do me a favor. Just go to their website, stoltzco.com. Let me spell that, STOLTZCO, stoltzco.com. Take a look at some of the things they've done for other people, and you're going to realize very quickly this ain't your grandpappy's pole barn. Then give them a call, 615-622-5992. Stoltz Co., where quality workmanship and great customer service is affordable. Learn more at their website, stoltzco.com. That's stoltzco.com. It is 39 minutes now past the hour of 5 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. Brian Wilson in the chair on this Wednesday, January 3rd. While we have a moment here, we've covered all the big stories of the day. Here's a story that's, I like to say, burbling right beneath the surface. Is burbling a word? I think it is a word.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, burbling. It's burbling, like a brook is burbling. A burbling brook, which is not easy to say. But I think it's going to be something that pops pretty quick. And I think that it's going to turn into an old-fashioned Washington, D.C. sex scandal of the first order. And I just wanted to sort of, put it on your radar as something to watch for, because this has all the markings of some very interesting stuff. International intrigue, a sex scandal involving politicians and top military or intelligence officials. I mean, really, honestly, this could blow up into a huge story. And I bet you right now, there are more than a few very uncomfortable people in the Washington, D.C. area. Okay, so let me just sort of pick it. The Daily Mail has a big story on this, and I'm going to draw a lot from what I'm saying from it, okay? Intelligence experts are increasingly convinced that 6 high-end brothels in the suburbs of Boston and Washington, D.C. were set up by a foreign nation as an espionage honey trap. They believe the brothels, allegedly masterminded by a 41-year-old South Korean woman, targeted politicians, high-ranking government officials, and defense contractors. But the mystery is which country is behind the scheme. Is it Russia? Is it China? Is it Korea? Or even Israel? All seen as possibilities behind this scheme. Having the Koreans out in front could have been a false flag to give China or another country plausible deniability if the plot unraveled, a one-time CIA senior operative told the Daily Mail in an exclusive interview. The brothels were raided in November, and prosecutors say they were looking to charge 28 people in Massachusetts alone. I don't understand how it would be interesting for them to go after targets inside Boston and the Boston area. There are 4 different places where this was operating in and around Boston. I mean, Cambridge, although there's some pretty high-level, research that goes on for the government in that area, but also in Watertown, Massachusetts. So there you go. Not Watertown, Tennessee for sure. I can promise you that. Joshua Levy, the acting U.S. attorney for the state, said his office will seek accountability for the buyers who fuel the commercial sex industry. Now, let's talk about what was going on in the Washington, D.C. area. There were 2 locations. One is in Tyson's Corner. Now, if you know anything about Washington, D.C., you know Tyson's Corner, stone throw from the CIA. Not very far. It is a high-tech corridor where a lot of things happen with regard to defense contractors. And, it is literally, I mean, you could throw a rock at the CIA from Tyson's Corner. The other is in Fairfax, Virginia, right across the river, just across the bridge, 2985 District Avenue, Unit 245, Fairfax, Virginia. That's within minutes of, you ready? It's literally almost across the street from the Pentagon. It's directly about 5 minutes away from the White House, from virtually any agency in town, which is right across the river and you're there. It is not far from Capitol Hill. Joshua Levy, the acting U.S. attorney, said his office will seek accountability for buyers who fuel the commercial sex industry. So, members of Congress, military officers, and national security contractors who possessed security clearances were among the steady customers at the high-end brothels run by this ring, according to prosecutors. They paid rates of up to $600 an hour, and it included corporate executives, professors, lawyers, and scientists, all who might have information that a foreign country would find interesting. To me, this sort of smells like China and their attempt to try to find information. If you got somebody you can blackmail them for the information that they hold. And if they have national security clearances, it's a real problem, right? Because they hold big secrets that the Chinese or others would love to have. To entice customers, the people who operated these brothels set up websites whose purported purpose was helping photographers find nude female models looking for work. Investigators believe the ring had made more than $1 million by the time it was busted. None of the clients have been identified or charged so far, but they could be soon unmasked after federal prosecutors announced they are seeking criminal charges. The probe into, quote, their involvement in prostitution is active and ongoing, said Department of Homeland Security Special Agent Zachary Midaliski in a court affidavit. A spokeswoman for Homeland Security is involved. Isn't that interesting? Spokeswoman for the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston, which is prosecuting the case, cited the same reason in declining to comment on questions about the prostitution ring, including whether the suspects had ties to foreign intelligence. Experts interviewed by the Daily Mail suspect the brothel scheme was a classic honeypot. The twin locations where the operator selected to set up shop in the first clue is a clue, said a number of them. As the country's political headquarters, Washington presents a target-rich environment for spies. In the affidavit, investigators identified 6 target locations where brothels were located in the Boston area and 2 in Virginia, as I mentioned, not far from high-sensitive areas. Extramarital affairs and sexual promiscuity and deviance are often helpful vulnerabilities, which is why honeypots are a time-honored practice of intelligence agencies. You think we don't do this? Of course we do in other countries. 2 of the brothels, as said, were in a luxury apartment building. The surrounding area is packed with national security giants such as, this is true, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, General Dynamics, who are, by the way, building some of our most secretive weapons. And Boston, where the other 4 brothels operated, is said to be a haven for defense contractors as well. Also home to top-tier universities such as Harvard and MIT that train government and military officials and produce reports for the Pentagon and the CIA. Now, the ring didn't have anyone based near D.C. as far as it can be determined. Suspects had to fly in and out of town with a rotating cast of sex workers set up for them at Virginia apartments and deal with routine business matters. From a practical standpoint, it would have been simply easier to open 2 more brothels in Boston unless the primary goal of the ring's operators wasn't maximizing profit, but in gathering intelligence. The most valuable information in Washington and Boston are government secrets, a former foreign spy who is well acquainted with this practice of honeypots, told the Daily Mail. If you open a prostitution business that caters to wealthy clients in those cities, you'll get a lot of people walking through the doors that have access to them. Former CIA Special Agent Nick McKinley, who now leads something called Deliver Fund, a nonprofit that works with law enforcement to combat human trafficking, echoed the point. If this had been a purely cash play, massage parlors are easy to set up and have lower overhead and cost and print money. And so the general sense of this is, and I think these intelligence people who are speaking to the Daily Mail have it right, this was aimed at gathering an intelligence and compromising people with security clearances or people who are in high political positions or people who worked at the CIA. I mean, you look at the locations and it just screams that this was some kind of operation designed to entrap those people in some kind of scandal so that they would give up the secrets that they possess. They wouldn't have pulled and influenced customers from government and national security circles. Spy agencies deem financial stress, greed, marital problems, and feeling underappreciated as work to be exploitable vulnerabilities. Extramarital affairs and sexual promiscuity and deviance are helpful vulnerabilities, which is why this is a time-honored practice of intelligence agencies. So in a relaxing atmosphere, a government official might feel the urge to impress an attractive young woman by dropping names of prominent colleagues and holding forth about his important responsibilities at work. Aspiring clients had to submit a membership application before they could book an appointment, so you had to know a little something about them. Bizarrely, numerous political, military, and business officials provided it all without blinking an eye and proceeded to have sex in an apartment that, for all they knew, was outfitted with equipment to record video, audio footage. They know who some of these people are, and when those names start to come out, we're going to have a huge scandal on our hands. So, look, I think this story has it exactly right, and I think we know that the investigation is ongoing, and we know that prosecutors have said, we're going to go after the Johns here. We're going to release the names and let the chips fall where they may. But the fact that the Homeland Security Department is involved in this says to me that there's a little bit more to this story. So watch this space. 50 minutes now past the hour of 5 o'clock. Let me talk about Johnny Fleeman and his restaurants, the Brass Lantern and Legends Restaurants, celebrating 35 years in Middle Tennessee and surrounding areas. I'd like to thank everyone and wish you a Happy New Year. And to celebrate their 35 years, allow me to tell you about their daily specials served all day. Monday, They have fresh breaded chicken fingers with fries and coleslaw, $8.99. Tuesdays, coleslaw, a slow-cooked 8-ounce prime rib and a side for $18.99. Wednesday is choice sirloin day, a 6-ounce sirloin, only $8.99. Hamburger steak on Thursday, $8.99. Sundays, they will feature 3 of their pasta dinners for $9.99. Remember, for over 35 years, the Brass Lantern and Legend restaurants have given you authentic, made-from-scratch, and delicious recipes at affordable prices. Hope you enjoy the good food and the service, and don't forget the daily lunch special, which starts at $6.99 each day. And don't forget to pick up those delicious Johnny Fleeman products at your local grocery store. You're going to enjoy your next visit to one of Johnny Fleeman's restaurants.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. You often hear me talk about diversification in the investing process, but how do we diversify? Well, we look for things that move in dissimilar fashion historically. Some of those market areas might be really small companies or really large companies, or very growth-oriented companies or value-oriented companies. One of the things that we find is that when we diversify between these various segments, we can reduce the volatility of the portfolio because they don't move in tandem with each other historically. Now, we can do that in U.S. markets, we can do that in international markets, and in emerging markets. And when we can dampen that volatility, we can help get ourselves a little bit of a better outcome as far as knowing what we might likely have in the future, or how we can take income from our investment portfolio. Now, we also want to add fixed income or bonds to the mix as well. Now, if we know that we need to do this, what's the best way to do it? Well, one of the things that we often teach is this concept of market efficiency. This won the Nobel Prize in economics as well. And it's the idea that if I'm investing in, let's say, small value stocks, if we look at professional managers and their ability to say, hey, should I have this stock or that one, and picking companies or areas of the market, we find that they typically get lower returns than the market does on its own. They just add expense and they can add a lot of volatility. One of the things we want to avoid is anything that can hurt your returns and increase your risk in the investing process. To learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call or call 615-851-1950.
Some news concerning President Donald Trump and Colorado's Supreme Court, crime in Tennessee, following up on damage from the December 9th tornadoes that hit Middle Tennessee, and a dog found on the side of the road in Dixon. 6 o'clock, Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It is 56 minutes now past the hour, making 57 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. We have 1 hour left to go here. I want to mention that the Jeffrey Epstein documents have been dumped. What we call it, a document dump. It's been put on a server somewhere. I'm told that there are over 1,000 pages of documents. So what does this mean? Well, it means that it's going to take a little while to go through that. And then they are identifying the names of people who are listed on some of these court documents as John or Jane Doe number 637. We know that John Doe number 36 is Bill Clinton now. That sort of leaked out. But there are many, many people who are listed, and it's not a classic client list, but it will reveal what has been alleged in some court documents that have used, instead of the names of the people who were accused, they've used the names John and Jane Doe. So it's looked at as, well, these are people who were involved deeply in some ways with what's going on. So it's going to take a while to go through and sort of match up and go through a full 1,000 pages of documents. News organizations, I know, I'm having been work on stories when there's a big document dump. What you do is you set up a sort of a brain room, or a room where you got like 10 or 12 people, and you print off the 1,000 pages and you hand everybody 100 pages and say, go through it and let me know, raise your hand when you have something. And so that's going to process. It's going to take a little time. Probably most of these stories are going to start dropping tomorrow as they have the chance to look at these documents overnight. Now, 59 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7.
It is 6 o'clock. I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. 36 degrees in Nashville. Latest forecast and a traffic report on the way in 5 minutes. Former President Donald Trump has filed his appeal with the Supreme Court to overturn last month's ruling in Colorado that he can't appear on the state's GOP primary ballot because he's disqualified under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Stephen Portnoy.
Lawyers for the former president say the Colorado Supreme Court ruling is not and cannot be correct. Their filing says, quote, President Trump in no way engaged in insurrection. The attorneys argue it's up to Congress, not the courts or state officials, to determine whether a candidate is eligible to be president, and they claim that office isn't covered by Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Courts across the country have been grappling with these questions, and only the Supreme Court can answer them. There's no telling when the justices might signal their intent to take the case.
Crime in Tennessee. A man was shot at a home in South Nashville early this morning. The shooting happened around 4:30 a.m. on Shasta Drive. One man was shot in the foot, will recover. Metro Police trying to get the bottom of what happened. They have heard conflicting stories now. Staying here in the Volunteer State, damage from the December 9th tornado outbreak may mean the demolition of a famous house here in Middle Tennessee.
I used to love that old house so much. Fox 17 says the former mansion of Conway Twitty may be torn down. Its current owners, Trinity Broadcasting Network, told the Hendersonville Planning Commission meeting Tuesday many of the buildings on the campus barely survived. They said the whole mansion itself was twisted. It was originally built in 1982 and allowed visitors to walk around the gardens in front until Conway Twitty's death in the mid-90s. Ken Weaver, WTN News.
And right now in Tennessee, News 2 says that a man, James Allen, was driving in Dixon last night and found a dog in a cardboard box full of puppies on the side of the road. Those dogs are now with Proverbs 12:10 Animal Rescue. And Allen said what made him stop was seeing the malnourished dog with the ribs exposed. That is the latest news, weather, and traffic on the way. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Good evening, everyone. 4 minutes to make it 5 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. I'm Brian Wilson, and you're listening to The Drive on this third day of January. It's been a very busy news day. As I mentioned, the Epstein documents have dropped, about 1,000 pages. It'll take a while to go through and figure out what's what and what they reveal. But it has now officially happened, so probably those stories will break tomorrow. The other big story today is that we had a big press conference down on the border. The Speaker of the House and some 64 congressional members were down to observe, what's going on down there as they continue to get ready to battle the Biden administration over its border policy. The person who organized the entire trip was Congressman Mark Green from the 7th Congressional District here in Tennessee, who happens also to be a chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, and he spoke to us earlier on the drive. Well, Mr. Chairman, quite a day down on the border. I understand that the Biden administration, if I got this right, they sort of cleaned up the place a little bit before you got there, right?
I'm not sure if it was the Biden administration or the drug cartels, because the flow just stopped. And so I got to think that the drug cartels had a little hand in this because they knew all the cameras would come when the speaker comes. So, we're talking 6,000 a day, and then boom, nothing. The only people that control the flow are the cartels.
Well, okay, so you had about 60 members of Congress down there. I explained to the audience. Well, thank you. I explained to the audience the backdrop where we are on Capitol Hill, where Republicans seem to be standing pretty strong and saying nothing's going to move really until you do something about this border situation. You heard the speaker say there in his last little comment that he believes that Republican resolve is even stronger now, having made this trip. Is that your sense as well?
Yeah, I think from the folks that are down here, certainly everybody is resolute to put the foot down on spending until the border gets taken care of. It's all about the package that gets negotiated, because we have to have some kind of security at the border, and we'll make a decision on. But everybody here is ready to to secure the border.
All right, so the Speaker of the House, this, I guess, is his first foray down there, or maybe, his most recent at least. What was his thought? What were his thoughts about all this?
I think, Mike has been to the border before. This is his first trip as Speaker, and it was great to, as, the Chairman of Homeland Security, kind of say, hey, look, this is an issue, that's an issue. The most important thing for me to hear him say was that this was his number one priority. And that's above everything else. So I was really, really encouraged to hear that from him.
Well, okay, great. And again, we heard some of your comments down there. Listen, I want to get your reaction to a couple of things that the administration has said, okay? Because I'm going to play a couple of little short clips for you. First of all, I want you to disabuse people of this notion that is being laid out there time and time and time again by Karine Jean-Pierre.
Now we are having, we believe, a very productive conversation in Congress with senators on how do we move forward in a bipartisan agreement to deal with the border security. That is important. Now, what we hope is that when Congress gets back, we'll be able to act and get these things moving forward so we can deal with this issue. Congress needs to act. The president took this very seriously on day one.
Yeah, see, now she keeps saying it's not us. We did something on day one. Would you explain what it is that the Biden administration did on day one and why it was absolutely a non-starter on Capitol Hill?
Well, on day one, they came in and did away with all of the Trump-era policies that were working. They did away with Remain in Mexico. They did away with First Nation, PPP, all that stuff. They did away with it, and it's resulted in the crisis that we have. So they've done exactly the wrong thing. We've shown them that those policies that they have implemented, catch and release, have created an incentive and has caused the mass wave of people coming across. We've shown them that the drug cartels have used that in order to get the fentanyl around, basically overwhelming the Border Patrol, causing Border Patrol to have to, leave the border wide open. Mayorkas has been made aware of it. It's very interesting. AG Garland actually admitted that was happening, and yet he's done nothing but double down on the same thing. And that's why this whole budget request from Joe Biden for money for the border is ridiculous, because all they want to do is process more people into the country. So, no, I'm not giving Joe Biden any money unless there's policy changes. There have to be policy changes. Are there needs for money? I mean, in H.R. 2, we put more money in there for overtime for Border Patrol, to plus up the Border Patrol, but that won't fix anything if they're just processing more people into the country.
Yeah. And that seems to be what they want to do. And by the way, here's the other little clip I wanted to play for you from Secretary Mayorkas, talking about, he was asked specifically about the 3 million people that are backlogged awaiting immigration processing and adjudication of their cases.
So that backlog is a powerful example of how broken our immigration system is and for how long it has been broken. Because that backlog existed when I was in the Department of Homeland Security in 2009. It preceded me then, and it precedes me now in my tenure as a Secretary of Homeland Security. That 3 million case backlog has been building for years and years and years. It got much, much worse when U.S. Citizenship and Immigration System Services, the agency within the Department of Homeland Security that administers our legal immigration system, was financially gutted during the prior administration.
Well, there he goes. He's trying to blame it on Republicans. And it is true that some of the people now coming across the border are getting slips of paper that suggest that their adjudication, their hearings on these matters will not take place for like 7 or 8 years. So what is the truth about this?
Well, it's real simple, and Alejandro Mayorkas needs to get a thermofluid dynamics class or go talk to a plumber. If you put more water in the pipe on this end, you're going to get a backlog on the other if you don't increase the diameter of the pipe on the other. All he's got to do, if he wants to decrease the backlog, is stop letting people in, and it'll start going down. Instead, the number is skyrocketing because he's basically opened the border. The flow is pouring across the border, and this backlog is just skyrocketing. All he's got to do is close the border, and we'll get it taken care of. Now, I understand immigration's got to get fixed, but Republicans fell for that years ago before I got into the Congress, and we're not going to do that again. Not on my watch anyway. And so we will get border security before we do anything on immigration.
We spent in the last hour some time talking about the situation in the Mideast. And yet you have an open border situation where perhaps as many as 1.8, 2 million people have come across the border that have had no contact with law enforcement. You know, there are people in this world, like people in the Mideast, who don't have our best interest at stake, who may well have come across the border. I mean, I know you're very concerned about this particular problem.
Yeah, I mentioned it in my prepared comments for the press release. You know, Director Wray, when he was testifying in front of my committee, made it very clear in answer to questions that with an open border and a war in the Middle East, Hamas can just walk right in. They have intent, they have the capability now because of Mayorkas and his policy. So, and we know for a fact that 9 people were brought here by an ISIS terrorist. They released them, let them into the country, and the FBI is now actively searching for those people inside our country as we speak. There was Becky, brought in by a known ISIS agent. So, and it was interesting, too, in that testimony, Brian, that the FBI director basically said he feared for his guys who had to go and do that job. I mean, that ought to wake us all up. Who knows who's here? And when the Border Patrol leaves the border to come in and process people, it's wide open. Yeah. I mean, it's wide open. Who knows who's here?
Yeah, we don't know, and yeah. that's the scary part. We actually don't know where they are. We don't know who they are. We don't know what they're up to. Yeah, it's scary. What about the negotiations? We hear that a lot of the negotiation is happening between the administration and the Senate. Give me your best information about where the negotiations now take place, because the Biden administration says that they're trying to work it out. You know, so what is the truth of that matter?
Well, I do know that the Biden administration is talking to the Senate, and I do know that Republicans in the Senate and Democrats in the Senate are talking, and the Republicans and a couple of Democrats have actually called me and said, what will you accept? And so all of this is going on. I haven't heard anything yet that makes me think they're going to actually effectuate policy that will work. So from my standpoint, we're still at the starting gate. Now, there could be some negotiation going on inside the Senate that I'm not aware of. Maybe the White House is okay with it. I don't know. I just know what, Kristen Sinema and, other senators who've called and talked to me have said. And I haven't heard anything that I could say yes to.
Well, that's a good question. What is it that you would accept?
I think for me, the most important, you would stop 70% of the flow if you just implement Remain in Mexico. If you simply implement Remain in Mexico and do detention by the law, the Immigration and Naturalization Act says exceptions to the policy are to be granted on a case-by-case basis. Everybody else gets detained. And if we detain people and fill up those ICE detention beds like they should be, then people will stop coming. Detention is deterrence. And that's why the law was written in a bipartisan fashion so many decades ago.
When are we going to get serious and go after the cartels as an enemy combatants? Because that's really what they are. They are doing everything they can to destroy the national security of this country, yet we don't seem to be willing to go after them the way that we have other enemies of our country.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I love the enemy combatant term a lot better than foreign terrorist organization, because foreign terrorist organization had some very specific stuff in it that, when applied to the drug cartels, doesn't fit on a legal basis. So I actually have been the one advocating for creating a new sort of classification that would allow the use of military force against them. That was supposed to be handled by there was a special committee formed on the cartels. I haven't been following that because I got my sights on Mayorkas. Hopefully they're getting some work done.
All right, so Mayorkas, he's going to be impeached, right?
I think so. I think we have a really good shot. You know, there were 8 Democrats that voted no on the privilege motion that was made by the other Green with an E, and so I went and talked to all 8 of those. There are 2 that are probably never going to be with us. If we get 5 of the others, and I think we can, because their big concern was due process, you know, and they didn't want to just willy-nilly an impeachment on the floor of the House without having due process. And I wasn't at the time done with my 5-phase investigation into Mayorkas. So they came to me, "You're going to finish this." "Yes, we're going to finish this." "What are you going to do after?" "Well, we're going to take these articles up and vote on them and mark them up in committee and bring them to the floor." And so they're like, "Okay, that's what I want to hear." And so I think we get 5 of those, which is what we need, and we pass an impeachment on the floor of the House. But, you know, we'll see.
That's Congressman Mark Green of Tennessee's 7th Congressional District, also the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, from Eagle Pass, Texas today, where a big press conference was that took place involving the Speaker of the House and 63 other members of Congress who were there to get an idea of what's going on. While I have a minute or 2 left in this segment, let me just say some of the things that have been put out there by the administration. Some things are just ridiculous. Here is Alejandro Mayorkas talking about some of the causes of the border problem. Yes, you're just going to have to, you're just not going to believe what he has to say.
So we are seeing the greatest number of displaced people, not only at our southern border, not only in the Western Hemisphere, but across the globe. We have the effects of climate change, poverty, increasing level of authoritarianism.
I mean, climate change, really?
The very many challenges that are at the root cause of the displacement of people around the world.
And in his mind, the enemy is the governor of the state of Texas.
So we have taken action on the border, and we've taken action with respect to the challenges that cities across the country are facing. Let me identify one fundamental problem here, and that is the fact that we have one governor in the state of Texas who is refusing to cooperate with other governors and other local officials and coordinate efforts to address a challenge that our country, which this country should stand united to address, that our country is facing. And it's a remarkable failure of governance to refuse to cooperate with one's fellow local and state officials.
Well, it's interesting that one Democrat who serves as the congressman down on the border in Texas, Henry Cuellar, seems to think that the Biden administration could shut this down in very short order.
Well, look, you know, without a doubt, last month in December, we saw over 300,000 individuals for 1 month. The last 3 years, we've seen numbers that we've never seen. Do we have a crisis at the border? Yes. Does the president have the authorities to secure the border without any changes? The answer is yes. President Obama did that with Secretary Jake Johnson, where the numbers were even lower than President Trump. He deported more people. So the authorities are there right now.
Yep, they got all the tools they need. It can be changed in the snap of a finger. One phone call sets this thing right. 21 minutes now past the hour of 6 o'clock on Super Talk. 26 minutes now past the hour of 6 o'clock on The Drive. I'm glad that you're with us here on this third day of January, getting the new year off to a good start. Just a reminder that we are making an announcement today that on the 15th of January, which is Caucus Day in Iowa, this broadcast will be coming to you live from Iowa. So you definitely want to hang in. We're planting the flag that Super Talk 99.7 is the place you go for political coverage in this election year. I'll tell you, a lot of people are moving to Tennessee. We've been talking about this for a while. When I first came to town, I was told, that about 100 people a day moved to the Nashville area. And so that number then I think went down some bit. But now, according to a story in the Tennessean, which quotes information from U-Haul, they now believe that an estimated 96 residents moved to Middle Tennessee each and every day in 2022. It's pretty easy to figure out. You figure out how many people have moved, then you just divide it by 365. But it comes to almost 100 a day in 2022. And so now in 2023, that was 22. In 23, when they say that Tennessee is the 5th most popular destination for one-way moves. Fifth. And so, when this number of 96 new residents came through in 2022, they were 6th. So I think it's probably safe to say that we're at probably at 100 or more per day people moving into Greater Tennessee area, Middle Tennessee area, than it's better, more people moving in than there were in 2022. The expansion of the South, the nation's most populous region, accounted for 87% of the nation's growth in 2023, as the region added 1.4 million residents. A lot of people moving to the South, the Southwest, the Southeast, and we're getting more than our fair share of them here in Middle Tennessee. So if we're 5th, where are the other? So this is the top one-way destinations with U-Haul in 2023. Texas is number 1, Florida number 2, North Carolina 3, South Carolina 4, Tennessee 5, followed by Idaho, Washington, Arizona, Virginia, and Nevada. That's where people are moving to. Where are they leaving? California, Massachusetts, Illinois, New Jersey, Michigan. Anything about those states that remind you of anything? What could it be? Louisiana, Maryland, New York, Connecticut, and then for some reason, Oklahoma. Oklahoma is, I think, the only red state in that batch. Well, Louisiana could be looked at as a red state. So so out of the 10, 8 of them are blue states, run by blue state politicians. Explains a lot, doesn't it? I'm talking about migrants. And when I talk about migrants in this case, I'm talking about people who are migrating across our country legally. Longtime New Yorker Sean Hannity has relocated from New York City to Florida. He announced on his radio show yesterday that he was broadcasting from his new home in the free state of Florida. He said, "We're broadcasting from Florida. Like so many Americans, I left New York for good, and now in a state with warmer weather, law and order, better education, more freedom, better quality of life, and guess what? No state income tax." And he is living in a state, he says, that shares his values. See, I think a lot of people would do that. So he's feeling pretty good about it. But here's the thing that he said, he's doing this radio show. What I think you need to understand, he's also doing his television show. It's a well-kept secret, but a lot of these guys on Fox News are broadcasting from their homes on a regular basis. They can do entire shows from their basement. They just set up a camera and a connection and a teleprompter, and they do the show. And there's more than a few people at Fox News who rarely now come to the studio any day. How about that?
Sounds like somebody
that.
I know.
Yeah, like somebody else I know. 30 minutes now past the hour of 6 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. Grace Point Healthcare delivers medicine affordably with menu-style transparent pricing, so you'll know how much it costs before the care is delivered. Smart Care plans, they still start at $69 a month, and you get unlimited office visits and free basic labs for the entire year. And because they treat the entire family, even newborns, they offer family plans as well. Now, the way this works is you take the Smart Care plan, you marry it with a high deductible insurance plan that you may have been forced to take, because that's the kind of thing they're offering these days. It could save you and your family hundreds of dollars. At Grace Point, they take their time with each patient. They see you the same or next day. There are no long wait times or crowded wait rooms. They treat naturally whenever possible. It is a military vet-owned practice. Just some of the reasons why it's been voted the best primary care provider year after year after year. Grace Point Healthcare is on Main Street in Franklin. Here's the number, 599-6868. That's 599-6868 to schedule a visit. $37 past the hour. We're headed to the top of the 7 o'clock hour where we'll hand it over to Mark Levin, the great one who will carry on through the rest of the evening, and he'll have a lot of stuff to chew on. There's a lot of stuff going on in the news today. This has happened in the last few moments, about half an hour ago. It appears that would be about what? Let's 6:30 here. So about 7 o'clock or so, East Coast time. We have had the release of the Epstein documents. It's a big document dump. It's about 1,000 pages of documents. And when you have that many documents in a big document of this, I've covered many stories over the years where they just dump a bunch of documents and say, okay, here it is, have your way with it. And it takes you a while to go through and sort of understand what the documents show. You have a team usually of people at major news organizations who are standing by to go through those documents. But we are getting a few little tidbits in the early going. I expect that what you're probably going to see here is tomorrow morning you're going to be flooded with stories about the Epstein documents and what they reveal. But it'll take a while for reporters to put that together because the information they're getting is voluminous and raw. And it just takes a while to put together, a little from column A, a little from column B, and make sense of it all. But here's what we're getting right now. This is from the Washington Examiner. The first names of more than 150 people allegedly associated with the late sexual abuser Jeffrey Epstein released by a court on Wednesday, former President Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, no surprises there, and former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson were named in newly unsealed court records as potential associates of Epstein before his arrest and death in 2019. One document alleged that Andrew Albert Christian Edward, the Duke of York, has knowledge concerning plaintiffs' false statements to the press, in court pleadings, and in sworn testimony, as well as events between the years of 1999 and 2002. Another revealed that former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, he served also in various capacities on Congress, in administrations in the past, may have knowledge concerning the facts behind claims by an alleged victim against one of Epstein's closest confidants. Notably, the document included numerous unredacted cell phone numbers related to the names. Wow. They usually block that stuff out. Or related to people with information about the names. The names were part of unsealed court filings that were sought in a 5-year legal fight waged by the Miami Herald to release information within alleged victim Virginia Guthrie's defamation lawsuit against Epstein associate Ghislaine Maxwell, which was settled in 2017. So, if you've got the phone numbers, cell phone numbers unredacted, it's not going to take long to start tracking down some of this information. And there'll be a lot of people changing their cell phone numbers tomorrow. Watch for these stories tomorrow. This is just the first little headline that we're seeing. Yeah, that's all I've got so far. It takes a while, as I say, to go through these documents. So it has begun. I want to spend some time talking, if I could, while I have a few minutes with you left before we run out of time today, about an area of the news that I think we need to be paying a great deal more attention to. And I know when I mention it, it's something that's been in the news. It sort of has a drip, drip, drip quality where it's sort of like, little things happen, but it's the same basic story, right? But now there have been some things happening in the Mideast that I think really bear some watching. Pay close attention to what's happening there because it is widening. It's no longer just a situation where it is Iran versus Hamas and the war that's going on in Gaza. It's because now it has turned into a wider event, and there's a lot of violence and a lot of things going on, and the entire region is on tenterhooks for a lot of good reasons. I mean, for example, right now, Iran is sailing its, and I'm using this in air quotes, warship into the Red Sea. Well, what's going on in the Red Sea? Well, it turns out in the Red Sea we have an aircraft carrier battle group. And so there's that. The Houthi rebels are coming under the attack of the United States, which is trying to secure the region so that shipping can continue unharassed by the Houthi rebels. The Houthi rebels do the bidding of Iran. So that's why Iran is sending a ship over there to support these little attack boats that the Houthi rebels are using to terrorize shipping in the region. And we're right in the middle of that. Is that a recipe for something that could go south? Yes, it is. The Israelis, it seemed to me, are doing some stuff that it may be interesting. We told you yesterday that a senior Hamas leader, Saleh al-Aruri, was killed on Tuesday in Beirut in what Lebanese officials described as a suspected Israeli attack. Now, the Israeli military was asked about this, and as you might expect, they declined to comment about whether it was responsible for this attack in Beirut. But it has the markings of the kind of thing that Mossad would do. If you're at war with Hamas, you want to take out the leadership, right? The leadership is not in Gaza. It's in other countries. Some of these countries, Israel would not have any problem acting in, and Lebanon is one of them. Other people maybe have a little bit of protection because of where they are, and the Israelis are not wanting to raise hackles with some other countries in the region any more than they're already raised. Hackles are raised. But then there's this, and I don't know what to make of this. 103 people were killed in explosions in Iran near a public ceremony commemorating the death of a senior Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps officer killed in 2020 by an American airstrike. The country's state media reported. Iranian officials said the blasts were the work of terrorists. 103 people dead, 211 people injured. Now, that's interesting. Who is this? This was a ceremony meant to honor Soleimani, who we killed with a drone strike years ago. It was a big victory for us to get Soleimani, and it was a brushback of Iran at the time. Now, apparently, they have an annual commemoration of his death, and this explosion is actually two explosions. Now, this does not look like Iran. This does not look like the United States. I'll tell you why. When the United States carries out an attack, or when Israel carries out an attack, especially if it's going to be on foreign soil, the thing that they want to do is try to limit collateral damage. In this particular attack, there were two explosions 20 minutes apart. What does that tell you? The first explosion was designed to just kill people. And in this case, 103 people died. The second explosion is designed to kill the first responders. Now, that is not the hallmark of a United States attack or an Israeli attack. Who is it? I don't know. But it again inflames tensions in the region. Iran, we haven't been willing to brush back Iran, even though they're responsible for Hamas, for Hezbollah, the Houthi rebels, and a whole host of other people who are doing their bidding in the region and causing mayhem. Somebody took action, and it was ugly. So you look at all of these things together. What we have. Warships in the area engaged with the Houthi rebels, the Iranian warship coming on its way. We have this attack inside Iran, and we're not sure who was responsible for that. And the ongoing efforts of Israel, which for now they've sort of pulled back from Gaza a bit. Not saying they won't go back in, but it'll be very targeted. But it's pretty clear that they took out this guy, Al-Rori, in Lebanon, so it continues again to be an area. And then there is this, and we should be very concerned about this. According to the French ambassador to the United Nations, Nicolas de Riveri, recently he said that Iran internationally told them that he's extremely concerned about Iran's jump in uranium enrichment. Our big concern, and something that the Israelis said they would never let happen, is that Iran would get a nuclear weapon because they are unstable. They would use it against Israel. Israel feels, and I believe they're right about that, to destroy everything they can about Israel. The United States, France, Germany, and the UK recently put out a joint statement slamming Iran for skyrocketing its enrichment of uranium up to 60% purity, which is very near the level needed to make nuclear weapons. The condemnation was a response to an International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, finding that Iran was doing this kind of work. The level of threat has increased a lot, so it's time Iran to get back to compliance. And the IAEA reported that on December 26th again, they had found violations of Iran's agreement. They're very concerned, says the French ambassador. Another report found that the total stockpile of enriched uranium in Iran now stands 22 times larger than when we pulled out of an agreement with Iran back several years ago during the Trump years. It's a dramatic matter. The so-called breakout time, which has security deadlines provided, have pretty much disappeared, and Iran is pretty close to having enough fissile material to assemble a nuclear device. Do they have the knowledge? No, but they know people who do. So, we need to watch the region very carefully. It's on tenterhooks. And it's much wider than just the battle between what's going on with Israel and Hamas in Gaza. The whole region is inflamed. And why is that? Let's just look at who's running our foreign policy. We're supposed to be the people that everybody else fears. And no one fears Joe Biden as commander-in-chief. This all happened, after Afghanistan, when we had a disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. And you have a situation where, well, the Chinese have been emboldened to be more aggressive toward their long-range plan to take over Taiwan. The Russians didn't blink an eye. They decided, okay, that guy's a loser. We can handle that. We're going into Ukraine. If we had not had Afghanistan, if it had been handled better, if the Biden administration had showed real resolve in that region and had acted in a smarter way, Putin would have never gotten adventurous and gone into Ukraine, and we wouldn't be fighting this war there, which has led to the utter destruction of large parts of Ukraine. Take decades to rebuild after this war is over. I don't know how it's going to end. Do you? I don't either. And now we have a situation with Iran where they don't fear the United States. The North Koreans don't fear the United States. The Chinese don't fear the United States. Nobody fears the United States because they don't fear Joe Biden. They think he's a wimp. They think he's way out of his element. They think he's got half a brain and they're right. So, it says to me that we need to watch very carefully the things that are happening in the Mideast writ large, not just Israel and Gaza. I want to end the show on this note, if I could. Listen, I have great affection for the Oak Ridge Boys and Joe Bonsall. Joe Bonsall, who's he? He's the guy who sings the high part in Elvira. On fire. Well, Joe Bonsall, the tenor singer for the Oak Ridge Boys, has announced his plan to retire from touring, according to a release and a statement from Bonsall himself. And this is sad because he's 75 years old. Let me just read from it a little bit. Many of you know I've been battling a slow onset over 4 years of a neuromuscular disorder. I'm now at a point where walking is impossible. And I have basically retired from the road. It's just gotten too difficult. It's been a grand 50 years. And I'm thankful to all the Oak Ridge Boys, band crew, and staff for the constant love and support that you've shown me through it all. I will never forget, and for those of you who have been constantly holding me up in prayer, I thank you and ask you to keep praying. He's going to be replaced by a guy named Ben James, singing the high parts for the Oaks. He says his sound is different than mine, but he brings a ton of talent to the table. The Oak Ridge Boys will finish the farewell tour without me, but rest assured, I'm good with it all. God has it. 52 minutes now, past the hour of 6 o'clock.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. You often hear me talk about diversification in the investing process, but how do we diversify? Well, we look for things that move in dissimilar fashion historically. Some of those market areas might be really small companies or really large companies, or very growth-oriented companies or value-oriented companies. And one of the things that we find is that when we diversify between these various segments, we can reduce the volatility of the portfolio because they don't move in tandem with each other historically. Now, we can do that in U.S. markets, we can do that in international markets, and in emerging markets. And when we can dampen that volatility, we can help get ourselves a little bit of a better outcome as far as knowing what we might likely have in the future or how we can take income from our investment portfolio. Now, we also want to add fixed income or bonds to the mix as well. Now, if we know that we need to do this, what's the best way to do it? Well, one of the things that we often teach is this concept of market efficiency. This won the Nobel Prize in economics as well. And it's the idea that if I'm investing in, let's say, small value stocks, If we look at professional managers and their ability to say, hey, should I have this stock or that one, and picking companies or areas of the market, we find that they typically get lower returns than the market does on its own. They just add expense and they can add a lot of volatility. One of the things we want to avoid is anything that can hurt your returns and increase your risk in the investing process. To learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call or call 615-851-1950.